Okay, the time is 3 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. This is the regular meeting of the Fargo Planning Commission. The first item is A, approving the order of agenda. No changes to the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approval of the agenda. Item B is the minutes of the regular meeting of July 6, 2023. If you've had time to review any questions or changes, if not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor signifying by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Now we will, I should mention, Rocky is gone, obviously. I'm sure today. Now we're gonna go ahead to public hearing items. The first item is 1 Alpha Bravo Charlie. I always do that. 1A, 1B, and 1C for civilian folk. We are going to hear about the Interstate Business District Addition, a hearing for the application for the growth plan, the zoning's change, and the plat. Commissioners, you have seen this before, coming back to us from the July 10th, 2023. Donald Crest to present.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Crest of the Department of Planning and Development. As the chair has stated, you've seen this one before. This was in hearings on May 2nd and June 6th, and your recommendation at the June 6th meeting was for denial. This went forward to the City Commission on July 10th. After hearing the presentations and testimony there, the City Commission referred it back to your commission. Since this was last in front of your commission on June 6th, this project has evolved. You may remember a very important item of discussion in the testimony there was the concrete crushing operation that was proposed to be on there. Subsequent to your June 6th meeting, the applicant, Trent Duda, decided to just eliminate that use on this property. So that is not a permitted use. That's indicated in the revised conditional overlay that's in your packet as well. So that is off the table, as they say. So it's a little different project. When the City Commission sent it back, as noted in the staff report there, they did, they were concerned about the growth plan as your commission was at the time. So I think we're fairly familiar with this project. We'll run through the background here first, again, for everyone, and then we'll talk about the growth plan. And I know we do have the applicant and his representatives and some testifiers here as well today. So I hope that laboring through 19 pages of staff report wasn't too much for you, but we do like to keep the complete record there. So if you do have any questions, please let me know. So we are here, located here. This is 40th Avenue South, 45th Street South, City of Riley's Acres extraterritorial jurisdiction. This piece up here is City of Fargo, ETJ, and I-29 there. The pictures, not much has changed from a couple of weeks ago here. This is the property. Memory Fireworks here is not part of this project. That's on an adjacent but property that's not part of this. And then this is in the distance here, the Riley's Acres ETJ residence, and then that piece of Fargo ETJ. This is just looking north on 45th Street. Here's County Drain 40. That figures into our discussion today. And again, the residence is in Riley's Acres. The trees do have leaves on them now, by the way. The proposed subdivision plat looks like this. There are 15 lots here. 2 of the lots are not developable. There's a long, narrow lot 8 here that will be dedicated to the Southeast Cass Water Resources District for the protection of Drain 40. Lot 2 will be acquired by the City of Fargo as a detention basin. These lots here are currently proposed to be zoned general commercial, and the outside lots here up against I-29 to be zoned to limited industrial. And then this piece here is not part of the plat. That's where Memory Fireworks is. This also includes a dedication for 40th Avenue North here, which is why this little tongue sticks out here. In the growth plan amendment, we did revise this from an earlier version of this that now shows that the growth plan, which is currently residential and proposed park here, would be commercial along the west side and industrial along the east. That's the proposed change. This is just a reference map to reinforce where everything is at here. This is an area where we almost overlap in some ways. So this is the Riley's Acres ETJ we'll be looking at, and here's the subject property. This is just an overview of a larger area of the zoning, of the growth plan. The brown would be industrial, the red commercial, and the lighter colors here would be residential. Again, the current zoning is ag, and there's a little piece of limited industrial with a conditional overlay that's really more related to the op construction property to the north that's on there. Again, here's the proposed zoning, just reinforcing what we talked about a moment ago. The green are government-owned. The sort of peach color there would be the commercial, and the light blue would be the industrial. This project includes a dedicated public street, 44th Street North, that will go up the middle. A point that's come up, and I put it in the staff report, and we'll just point it out here, is that as you see, this property, this 44th Street connects to 40th Avenue, and there will actually be an easement. It doesn't just dead end there. There'll be an easement across the drain and the drain board property to connect to 45th. Due to the size of this property, that's a fire code requirement that there have to be two accesses. As the applicant Trent Duda will point out, he originally had proposed to have this as a cul-de-sac, so traffic was entirely contained on this property. But that is a fire code requirement, and there is no variance or workaround for that. That's, fire code is the last thing that you can change, and that's a hard code. We have, just to recap this for you, we've had a number of meetings on this. We did have a neighborhood meeting before the May 2nd Planning Commission, had May 2nd, it was continued to June. There was another neighborhood meeting, it was the June 6th meeting, and then the City Commission hearing on July 10th. And I gotta, hang on here. I got 3 PowerPoints going here at once, so I gotta make sure we're on the right slides. Okay, we're in the right place here. So, our staff's recommendation here is still for approval, and we did talk about the growth plan. And as you look, and I'm going to read off my staff report here for a moment. We did do some more analysis of the growth plan, and this was an area of concern to your commission, the City Commission, and to the nearby residents. As to what would happen, I'll go back here a little bit, as to what would happen in this area of the ETJ if this were changed to the commercial and industrial. Would this set a precedent or spill over into the adjacent area? And our analysis was that it really wouldn't, because these are different areas. The way we looked at it, and this is explained in your, well, I guess this is probably the best one here. In your staff report, this is an interstate exit. This area here is an interstate exit. And if you look at all the interstate exits in Fargo off I-94 and I-29, though there is residential along the interstate itself, the exits are almost all developed with industrial and commercial uses of some kind. There are various different things here, and I believe the applicant's real estate agent has a presentation on that. The exceptions are 19th Avenue, where NDSU owns all 4 corners for their research facilities. And there's, when you come off 25th Street and I-94, on the northwest corner, there's Prairiewood, I think, is the development, and that was there 15 years before that interstate interchange was built. So they're all developed with that. This is, as we've often pointed out, separated from the subject property, separated from Riley's Acres ETJ by 260 feet plus the buffer that the additional 20-foot buffer that the applicant will put on there. In the planning world, that's a long way. When you're living right there, it's probably shorter. But if we're looking at a planning perspective, that is a long way. And then, of course, the industrial is further than that yet. This is, again, a major arterial here. If you've all come down 40th and seen that sign right as you go north of the airport, future arterial. And so that's how that's developed there. This property up here, however, probably isn't very well suited to being commercial or industrial. It's not really on anything. These roads are never really, there's no way for them to really continue to any place due to the way the interstate is configured. And, it's not a high visibility area. You could probably, I guess you can see it from the interstate, but you can't really get there from the interstate. It is adjacent, and as has been pointed out by several of the residents, there is no separation here at all. This is, their property line is an invisible line right there. That's all there is. So that is a different situation than the separation here. And again, those are government owned. That's a street and a drain, and then the drain buffer lot. So that's not something that can even be developed. You're fairly safe on that part, I would say. And so, make sure we covered all the points here. So that was how we analyzed the growth plan and the support for the proposed change. So our findings for the growth plan didn't change. And then, the additional explanation in there of why we don't think that this would spill over across 45th Street because that area just isn't really suited for that sort of development. So going back to staff's recommendation here, if your commission, by the way, would choose to recommend approval, please use the motion on the screen. The wording's just a little more accurate than the one in your staff report there. The applicant, Trent Duda, and his representative, Lee Grossman of SW&L Attorneys is here, and Nathan Volmuth from representing Mr. Knutson is here as the applicants, and then the Riley's Acres residents are here as well. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for Donald, Commissioner?
Donald, so last time they were talking about the barriers and the setbacks.
Yes, sir.
Are they the same as they were before with what we had talked about when it was before us last time?
So I will recap that, and Mr. Duda can follow up on this. So he would be providing a berm and a earthen berm of a height. The fence was taken off. There's originally, in the first time you saw this, there was a fence, but the applicant opted to remove that. And then there would be trees, a tree line along those lots that let's see here, that would face the Riley's Acres ETJ. So these lots down here, these commercial lots that Trent Duda owns, those trees would be planted by the property owners of those lots as they develop. So the current situation. This lot, if I just may finish that thought here, Commissioner Rosenberg, this lot here, this area is already designated as commercial on the growth plan. That's a separate owner, so he wouldn't have the trees there.
But is the setbacks the same? Because with general commercial, you wouldn't have to be having this an extreme setback that.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, the GC setbacks would be a little shorter than I don't have that number in front of me. They would be a little shorter, but the buffer, the 20-foot wide buffer would still be there.
Right, but this is the same proposal as last time.
Yes,
With that line hasn't moved.
yes, that's correct, sir.
And the berm is still there.
Yep.
And this time they're gonna do trees instead of fencing.
Well, they were going to do trees, I think,
And
and a fence
fencing?
once, but now they're just the trees. But yes, sir, this
Okay.
is the same. It looks the same, except there's no concrete crushing involved in this.
That's the only real change.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Other than, and splitting it from GC to,
Yep, and that's what you looked at that.
Yep.
That was revised between the two.
okay,
meetings.
thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Donald, does the berm and the trees, do those extend onto that lot 9? Because that will be right on 45th, is that right?
Yeah, but that, I don't believe they're intended to, sir, because that is not, the Riley's Acres lots are south of there.
Okay. And then can you speak to what the conditional overlay is on the property to the north where it's already LI?
Yes, I think we do. That is on, so it's it was done some time ago here, and it's limited industrial, and it allows op construction to be there, but that's about the only industrial use it has on it. It has limited other uses to what's, I think, available in general commercial, because general commercial and limited industrial uses overlap somewhat, so that it cuts it down to that. So, but op construction is clearly, we'd call it a industrial service use up there as a contractor.
Okay. Would there be a similar opportunity with the LI here to have more restrictive conditional overlay?
That is a possibility, sir. Yeah, we can, with conditional overlays, you can restrict uses, you can't add uses, but you can restrict them. That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Donald, just a clarification of the tree line that's getting planted in there. Did you say that it would be installed as the property is developed, or is that?
I believe that
day
is
one?
the intent, sir. Yeah, when Mr. Aduda's up here, you can probably cross-check that with him, but that is, as I understand the intent, correct.
Sure. And then one other question. I know that DOT is in the process of evaluating the 40th Avenue interchange
Yes, sir.
there. And I did see in the packet, there's some concern with traffic flow and safety there. So could you maybe speak to some of the traffic and safety improvements that are planned for that intersection, if there are any at this point?
Well, I'll do my best. I might have to turn to Mr. Nachmus here, our city engineer. That is a DOT project, commissioners, as Commissioner Schmidt has stated. That is unrelated to anything that's happening here. That's been in the pipeline for a long time. It, as far as we understand, it does not take any right away from this. Excuse me, Tom, do you have any info on what that's going to look like? Or?
There has not been a decision made about what that configuration would be, but they have gone through an initial study. I think the initial preferred option was roundabouts at the ramp terminals. But yeah, to Donald's point and what he mentioned, that project would not extend further west than the westernmost ramp terminal.
So basically, it wouldn't be any more right away than it is now. And then to follow up on something else you said, sir, when this 40th is improved here, you might remember at our first meeting in May, the Cass County engineer, Jason Benson, was here. And he said, and this is in the staff report too, that at the time of development, the developer will be required to put in turn lanes and bypass lanes here, so it doesn't interrupt the flow of that traffic. Well, it limits the interruption of the flow of the traffic for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Donald?
Donald, can you refresh our memories about that, the discussion had on April 20th with the neighborhood growth plan? I know we've been hearing about this a lot. Sorry to put you on the
No,
spot
no,
about
that's
that,
fine.
but
Well, I'll tell you what, I will
you
have-
referenced it in your
Sure.
presentation.
Let me
and I-
refer to my own staff report here to recap that, because this is going back in time here. But on April 20th, so whenever we have a growth plan, a request for a growth plan pursuant to the Land Development Code, we have a public meeting to meet with the neighbors. So that was on the April 20th. I'm looking at page 5 of the staff report here, ma'am. So some of the neighborhood concerns there brought up, and many of the folks here were at that meeting, that the change from the current least intense land use designations, like residential and park, to the most intense zoning designation, that'd be the commercial and industrial, seems like a drastic change. There's current concern about the effects of the industrial uses, particularly the concrete crushing, which again has now been eliminated, but any industrial uses wanting to have sufficient buffering, again, increased traffic along 40th Avenue and perhaps 45th, and how the value of the properties might be affected. So I think those have been continuing themes throughout the period of testimony, ma'am.
Thank you, Donald.
Any other questions for Donald? Thanks, Donald.
Yes, ma'am.
I welcome the applicants up. Just a reminder to state your name for the record.
I'm Trent Duda with ARD Properties.
Good afternoon, I'm Lee Grossman, attorney here representing ARD Properties.
We had appeared at the Fargo City Commission meeting on July 10th, and at that meeting, Mr. Kress had given his presentation, and the Fargo City Commission sent it back to this planning commission in order to consider several matters that I believe staff recommendation has alleviated those concerns. So we're here today to ask the planning commission to approve the suggested motion that Mr. Kress had presented. Staff reviews the application to address what is legally required by the Land Development Code. And in this situation, with this particular property, it has been reviewed 3 times by the staff with varying degrees of accommodations for concerns. And all 3 times, the staff has recommended approval. So even at the most stringent, at the very first report that came through with concrete crushing, the staff had recommended approval. Since then, accommodations have been made to concerns by both commissioners and property owners in that area. And again, staff is recommending approval. Each time that we're here, staff is recommending approval. The main concern that was raised the last time this was before this commission was concrete crushing. That has been completely removed. The residential protection standards that are in place through the development code are exceeded here because Riley's Acres is separated from non-residential development by a greater distance than would trigger any residential protection standards of the code. We heard Mr. Crest state that it's about 280 feet between the buffer area that is allowed here, which exceeds RPS in the code. There's a progressive step down in development. We have the interstate, and then according to the proposed growth plan that would be in place, the new one, it would go from the interstate to industrial along the interstate to commercial along 45th Street North. There would be a buffer area, and then there'd be residential. So there is a gradual step down in zoning between the industrial lots and the residential lots. Construction already operates out of this area. Memory Fireworks already operates out of this area. More detail on those 2 businesses as industrial and commercial are in the staff recommendation report. A similar project was proposed that is in South Fargo, and I had referenced this during the city commission meeting, of Coast Materials has a concrete crushing operation just west of I-29 and north of 40th Avenue South. Just west of that operation are apartment buildings and townhomes. And this location was approved within the last 15 years. The Coast Materials operation in that location is closer to those apartment buildings and townhomes than ARD properties would be to the homes west of 45th Street and Riley's Acres. The staff noted that assumptions of the 2007 growth plan didn't come to pass at the time that the growth plan was made in 2007. Residential development was, the thought was that residential development would take off in North Fargo and in particular this area. That never happened as expected. Instead, residential development is happening in South Fargo and Southwest Fargo. In fact, this particular property has been continuously for sale for 20 years until ARD Properties purchased it. So if someone wanted to come along before ARD Properties and develop this as a residential area, they had plenty of opportunity to do so. Nobody saw it as a viable place to develop residences, and that's why it had never been developed that way. Concerns about the appearance of this area had been brought up in the past, coming into Fargo from the north, which are overblown. On the east side of the interstate at this location, you have Amazon, you have Marvin Windows, several large industrial lots. If this were developed as residential, which is what the neighbors would like, or would like to keep it as ag and residential, it would be the only residential development along I-29 between Harwood and the apartment complexes that are south of 13th Avenue South. Here, ARD Properties has met all the criteria for development 3 times. There's no sound reason why its application should not be approved. Any denial would be arbitrary and capricious and not based on the development code. If the commission has any questions for me or Mr. Duda, we'd be happy to answer them.
You have any questions for the applicants?
With the removal of the concrete crushing, what's the development plan, especially for lots 9 and 10, but really all of the LI area?
You know, I don't know exactly what it is. There's many businesses that fit in that industrial and commercial. You know, it just depends, you know, whoever, it could be anything from, you know, there'll be a slideshow up here what it could be. I mean, there's many things that it could be. Obviously, I'm not crushing there anymore, so there won't be that. And I know that that was a big concern, so. But yeah, you can, I mean, car dealerships, you name it, it can be about anything up there, so.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I believe Mr. Nelson is one of the applicants, also has a presentation.
Yeah, we have a little of a PowerPoint just to show, just so we can, Tom Nelson, Swan Real Estate in Fargo here. Put together just a little bit of a PowerPoint showing the area where Fleet Farm is on the interstate. If you look at that, it shows the zoning and the condescending colors that go with it. So if you look at where that map is and the type of development that's in the area, that's the back of Fleet Farm. That's a residential area directly behind. They've done a nice job with the buffering, the berm, the trees, which is very similar to what Trent has offered to do for his development, except the distance is greatly increased as far as how much space is between the residential and the commercial. It's general commercial and it's actually industrial. The slide there, that one right there, is actually industrial. That's where DAC and MVM construction are. So if you go into that area, if you scroll down a little bit more, Donald.
Yes, sir.
Just to give a general feel of what that looks like. Go one, maybe go one or two more. Keep going. This is just a zoom in of the same zoning map that was the first one. And it shows the gray is the MVM construction and the DAC computers. And then the red is the Fleet Farm development. And if you look at the distance from the corner with the measurement on the top, it was 123 feet, but from the actual industrial or general light industrial, it was 64.26, I believe, feet is the current distance. So this is, I guess, an example of a development in South Fargo that is very similar to what we're talking about for North Fargo. Here's just an overall view. There is Fleet Farm. To the left is DAC MVM, and then that buffers right up to the bike path in the back. And I think it's a successful development for Fargo that's worked out well. It's mixed use. It serves the purposes. I think many of us in this room have gone to Fleet Farm, probably gone through the residential areas on our way to Fleet Farm. So if you want to scroll to the next one, just to give some general overview. Again, this is the development. Again, we've already talked about this, but the spacing is, and the setbacks are much greater than are required by code. Go on to the next one, please, Donald. And then there was a little bit of discussion about traffic. We won't really need to probably go there, but you know, the growth and the development of that area has been in play for a long time. This isn't a new thing. If you go on to the next couple of slides, it shows what type of progress is going on in that area right now. This is to the south. So this is commercial development south of the Riley's Acres and within the city of Fargo. Go to the next one if you can. And then this is just the growth for the Riley's Acres area. There's a lot going on out there. This project is, you know, that area has been growing for a long time. This is just another piece that fits into it and will make use of the land. So I think that's kind of about it. If anybody had questions, I just wanted to give it some context. So, and then these are just various areas in town showing the zoning, both light industrial and GC.
Go ahead.
And here's an example of the types of buildings. I guess there was a question that was asked earlier, what is planned for this? You know, it's hard to, you can't always foresee all of those things, but commercial industrial buildings, everything from probably some types of office and, you know, warehouse type facilities. Butler Equipment on the left is an example. That is in the industrial area behind Butler Equipment in South Fargo. It's an example of, you know, that type of the kinds of development or things that could be in there. So we have everything from shops, warehouses, some construction type work, and even offices.
Yeah, I thought that Fleet Farm example is really helpful just to visualize what that could potentially look like. And if, Donald, if you could maybe go back to that slide, I think
Yes, sir.
my question is really what that's representing, and maybe this is a good one here, that distance from the street to the back of Fleet Farm, and that includes that earthen berm and landscaping, about what distance was that according to that? Maybe it was the previous one.
126 feet.
Okay. And
Again, it was from a corner, so it was maybe measured a little bit off, but it's probably just slightly less than that if you go further down to the south.
sure. And that's from the street to the back of the Fleet
That was from
Farm
the property lines. The one slide is from the property lines
Oh.
to the next property. So that right there is
Okay.
Fleet Farm's corner, and then the gray above that is the MVM contracting, which is light industrial.
So this way is north, Commissioner.
Yes, sorry.
And so that this one is roughly 125 feet in the Riley's Acres Interstate project. We're looking at that buffer is approximately how?
Well, the existing space is 260 feet, and then they would have the additional 20 feet of buffer.
Okay.
Keep in mind a football field is 360 feet.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder to state your name for the record.
Thank you, Commissioners. Nate Volmuth with Goldmark Design Development, representing Ron Knutson. I'm going to keep mine very brief, but I wanted to, Tom and Trent and his representative did a great job, so there's a lot of things that I was going to talk about that I'm not going to. But I do want to just talk about one point, which has come up in this meeting, has come up with city staff on multiple times. For me and from other developers, developer types in town, is that industrial use unfortunately has kind of a bad name. But I think, and Tom did a great job showing this, the types of buildings and developments in town that are actually industrial that people wouldn't necessarily think of. And the perfect example that he just showed was Luther Family Ford and Chevrolet, and that's a limited industrial lot. And right behind it is office, which is general commercial, and right behind that is multifamily and single family residential. So it's a perfect example of what is done in town, what step down zoning is like. But I wanted to just bring it up as another for the neighbors too, but like industrial unfortunately gets sometimes a bad rap, but it's not necessarily what you always think it is. Later on in commission meeting, I'm actually going to be up here on another topic talking about putting industrial into an office building, which we'll talk about later. But it's simply someone that wants to make a ventilator for a business, and because what they do, it's called industrial, and so it has to be an industrial zone district. So I just want to say that for the commissioners, but also for the neighbors, that industrial a lot of times isn't necessarily what you think it's going to be. So thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. I believe we can go ahead and open it up to public hearing. I'll just remind you that when you go up to the podium, please state your name for the record. And we will take a break at 4 o'clock, but we will remain with that.
Hi, my name is Paula Peterson, and I'm a resident of Prairie Estates, a Riley's Acres ETJ community, and I live on 45th Street North. I've spoken with you guys many times already, but on behalf of our entire community, I'm here to outline the objections that residents of our area, along with many residents of the Riley's Acres, have regards to this zoning proposal. Although staff has recommended, we have repeatedly challenged these findings. I would like to cover some specific points related to the Planning Commission's findings. Based on the June 6 Planning Commission hearing, you moved to deny this project on the basis that it did not satisfy two of the growth plan findings. Number one, is the proposed change consistent with surrounding land uses, both existing and future? They indicated that it was not consistent with, so they marked it as criteria not satisfied. How does the proposed change impact the long-term sustainability of the city? Does the change contribute to or detract from? The proposed change would have a negative impact on the long-term sustainability of the city and would detract from the livability. Criteria is not satisfied as stated in your documents. Will the approval of the zoning change adversely affect the condition or value of the property within the vicinity? Staff stated, staff has no documentation to demonstrate that the approval of this zoning change would adversely affect the value of property in this vicinity. Staff finds that the approval of the zoning change will not adversely affect the value of the property. They then mark this criteria as satisfied. However, that does not make any sense. They state they have no information, yet we provided to you research and quotes from real estate professionals in the area that their estimates that we would see a 25% decrease in the market value of our homes that have been there for almost 50 years. This criteria should have been marked as not satisfied. We have strong objections to this effect as it will have on our property values, and this is all about what we are fighting for. Properties that have been there for a long time, even prior to Riley's Acres. Regarding the buffer between the zoning and existing residential, it is not a long way. We can still see, feel, and experience everything that is happening. A 3-foot berm is not enough. Amazon across the interstate from I-29 has a 12-foot or plus berm. Secondly, trees required should be multiple rows of pine trees because any other trees only last several months through our seasons, and they offer no sound or visibility protection to us. These trees should be required to be planted now, all at once, including all the way down to Lot 1, regardless if it was residential or commercial zoning. The Planning Commission has confirmed from the Fargo ETJ area to the north of Prairie Estates along 45th Street North, it cannot be commercial or industrial in the future because there is no other outlet. It will have to stay as residential. Based on this, Fargo now has additional properties that will be zoned as residential that will be affected by whatever the decision of the zoning for the Interstate Business Edition means. This effect is now on a greater size committee than before. The Planning Commission has not provided any new information since the July 10th City Commission recommendation. They were asked to provide analysis of the demand for commercial or industrial on the north side, as you saw in your packet. The response is they did not receive any request, therefore they are not seeing the demand. I think this answers the big question. Why are you even considering this type of zoning for this particular area? As we have stated as a community multiple times, this type of zoning belongs in other areas of the city, 12th Avenue, 19th Avenue, etc. It does not belong next to a large, already existing residential community. The initial growth plan states that residential was marked there for a good reason, because of the fact that it does border existing residential. There is a need for residential development on the north side of Fargo per the Fargo Housing Plan, which was just released in June. Large employers on Fargo's north side have residents wanting an area to have larger lots where they can find larger than they can find in current Fargo city limits. They do not want to live in areas south and west of the city, which makes commuting a nightmare, and being in overcrowded schools and paying high specials. There is no sound reason to leave the zoning as residential as per the growth plan. You should not have any concerns about being next to an interstate because there are many examples of large residential developments next to an interstate that do not have sound barriers today. Despite the example that you just recently saw regarding Fleet Farm, I can provide to you several other more pertinent examples of larger developments that are right next to the interstate. For example, Prairiewood, Bluemont Lakes on the corner of I-29 and I-94, Centennial, 42nd to 46th Avenue South. There are no barriers. They are closer to an interstate than we are. South of Frontier, around 60th Avenue South. Again, a prime example of residential homes that have been built that have no sound barriers next to them. Industrial and commercial zoning does not make sense for this small area of land. We have a very strong objection to this because the current overlay includes manufacturing and production. Lot 9 on the zoning map indicates industrial zoning. However, it is next to 45th Street and residential and should be changed. On the south side of this property, Memory Fireworks, yes, is currently there. They are a warehouse with retail, not more than 2 weeks a year. There is no major disruption to the community, and this is not annexed as part of the city of Fargo because fireworks sales are not permitted. Op Construction to the north is a landscaping company, not industrial. They're not producing anything. There is no disruption. In previous meetings, we were told by the planning department that we should do our research on North Dakota and federal EPA regulations. Well, we did. And concrete crushing would have violated all 3 criteria due to particle emissions, specifically the facts that this type of business would not be allowed in city limits or within a half a mile of existing residential. Perhaps this is why it was then removed. You will hear more about this from one of our other speakers. It is the responsibility of the building permit committees to do their research to ensure that the type of businesses comply not only to the zoning and conditional overlays, but will also meet all state and federal regulation criteria. How can we be assured that this process will happen in the future? Today, there is not enough criteria in the conditional overlays. Ultimately, we do not agree with the staff recommendations. There is no benefit to this type of zoning for this large community. Again, we would like to thank you for listening. We've been here multiple times. I know this has been a lot for you to consume, but we as a community have a lot at stake in terms of the effects on us. This is a dramatic change, and we will continue to voice our opinion. We hope that you consider all of the facts, how it implicates an existing residential community, and how it fits into the city of Fargo's values, and how you think about the people that it affects. Manufacturing and production does not fit the small community area. In addition, there are concerns about the additional truck traffic, environmental and air quality concerns, additional noise, and more. Yes, we are objecting to a lot. However, based on the information and lack of criteria being satisfied and lack of proof that this type of zoning fits this specific area for a long-term planning perspective for the city of Fargo, we hope that you take all of these into consideration and vote to deny the zoning proposal. We thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. My name is Maria Goryacheva. I am a materials expert and a professor of chemical engineering with UND. Today, I would like to express strong objection to the proposed zoning changes for several reasons. First, rezoning to limited industrial will open the gate to numerous manufacturing operations. At this time, the developer is not required to identify individual businesses. However, I would like to give you the examples that are allowed to be placed in a limited industrial zone according to the Fargo Land Development Code, section 20-1203.e. Without any further entitlement from the Planning Commission or City Commission, the following operations may be placed in a limited industrial zone: slaughterhouses and meat packing, storage of weapons and ammunition, disposal of dirt, disposal of concrete, disposal of asphalt. The last three operations align very well with the existing applicant's excavating business. This brings me to the second point. The application in its current shape allows storing, transferring, and disposal of cement dust, the adverse effects of which we have disclosed in detail at prior meetings. It also allows recycling and crushing of asphalt. Is crushing asphalt worse or better than crushing cement? In short, the adverse outcomes are identical, and that's cancer. But in addition to that, when crushing asphalt, the residents not only exposed to the heavy metals, but also asbestos. Less than 40 years ago, asbestos fibers were commonly used in production of asphalt to strengthen the material. At prior meeting, Planning Coordinator, Mr. Donald Kress, has stated the following, quote, "It appears that there is no real local regulation that fits this exact situation. In North Dakota, there are no environmental findings for my team to fall back on in this situation," end of quote. At that time, the focal point of discussion was cement crushing operations, and as we've seen earlier on the slides, there were 4 total meetings where cement crushing operation was discussed. We now find that the state does have clearly outlined regulations with respect to any operation that emits particles. Before I announce these regulations, I would like to highlight the following. So the lot itself does not have the irregular shape. So if I am to estimate the width from the 45th Street to the west, all the way to the highway, that distance is less than 0.4 miles. According to North Dakota Administrative Code, Chapter 33.1-15-05, any source of particulate emission cannot be located within 0.5 mile of any occupied residence. That requirement alone is larger than the size of the discussed lot. The emission source cannot be located within 1 mile in the vicinity of 2 occupied residences. The emission source cannot be located within 0.25 miles of any highway or public road. The discussed lot borders public road and the highway. Based on these findings, cement crushing operation could not have been placed in the discussed lot without violating all 3 regulations. The recommendation that have been issued by staff on June 6th is in direct violation with existing regulations that I just referenced to. Seeing a mistake of such caliber taking place shakes the very foundation of our trust in planning staff. There is no room for error when an industrial zone is being established next to residential. This is the case when caution must be exercised. This brings me to my last, yet not least point. In the application, the staff has now expressed their concerns regarding the air quality, and I'm going to quote, this is page 14 out of 19. During the testimony at the several hearings on this project, there have been several public comments regarding a concern for air quality related to industrial development. Staff does not have the background to evaluate concerns about air quality related to health, end of quote. I would like to present some of the existing data directly related to the air quality in Fargo in general and the Cass County. American Lung Association just published their annual report where they announced a list of 25 most polluted cities nationwide. And Fargo, unfortunately for all of us, is a new addition to that list. We are currently ranked number 22 out of 25. If we are to consider Cass County alone, the probability of contracting airborne cancer in Cass County is 21% higher than across the state. The potential risk of developing serious respiratory complications in Cass County is 43% higher than statewide. Despite this data, the staff has again recommended approval. I will state it again. There is no room for error when an industrial zone is being established next to residential. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Morell. I'm a North Dakota licensed physician, board-certified radiologist, currently working here at the Veterans Hospital in Fargo. I also serve as chairman for the University of North Dakota Department of Radiology. At prior meetings, I had discussed the extremely dangerous health consequences of cement dust exposure, including multiple types of cancer. I want to highlight the potential health consequences facing the citizens. If not cement dust, it should be understood that nearly all industrial processes generate waste. This waste will cause environmental contamination in the neighboring area, and without specific details of what is planned, I cannot say for certain whether that risk is higher or lower versus cement dust. But regardless, I can say that risk will remain. It will be difficult to contain, difficult to monitor, difficult to regulate. This risk cannot be sufficiently attenuated by a reduction in concentration. That is not hyperbole, so let me say it again. The risk will not be eliminated by reducing the concentration. Why would that be? Well, the true issue here is duration of exposure. The people in this community will be exposed day after day, week after week, year after year. So even when exposure is very small, it accumulates over time. When will disease develop? Could take 1 year, maybe 5, maybe 20, but in my personal opinion, none of these timelines are acceptable. To the citizens who have their domiciles in the neighborhood, they are the proverbial rats in a cage. Further, I would like to discuss, my personal opinion is that there may be some bias in the way staff is presenting information as it is being carried forward from meeting to meeting. At today's meeting, the comments and sentiments of the Fargo City Commission seem to be omitted. So, in the spirit of transparency, I would like to restate a few direct quotes from the July 10th meeting. Deputy Mayor Arlette Preston, quote, "Has there ever been any analysis for what needs are for industrial land in the city limits as we grow?" Next quote, "My concern is that without looking at the bigger picture, is this amendment appropriate?" Next quote, "Who wants an isolated piece of industrial here if the rest of the land actually ends up being something else?" Commissioner Dave Pipecorn, quote, "We just concluded our housing study and it shows that we need a lot of housing and all different kinds of housing. And so to me, for us to be talking about removing potential housing sites for commercial, I think that would be a big mistake at this point." Next quote, "South Fargo is going to be growing tremendously. That is great. I think we should also be hoping that North Fargo grows tremendously as well. When you're talking about the sound, the interstate is already there, so when you're moving in after the fact, people are going to know, and developers know how to handle sound." Next quote, "North Fargo schools could use more population, and there's a lot of ways that this would benefit North Fargo." Next quote, "The other thing is, Riley's Acres, those people, when they built out there, they knew they were taking a risk because they're not part of the city of Fargo. However, we have to be good neighbors to them, and it's common sense says you can't put industrial next to residential. We would never do that in the city of Fargo. And so to me, I think our goal is that this should all be residential on this side of the interstate." Next quote. I would lean to say there is just no way we're going to put industrial here. End quote. Mayor Dr. Mahoney, in regards to sending this discussion back to the Planning Commission, quote, I think we would want it to match up a little bit more with the growth plan, and it may need to take the concerns of the public into consideration, end quote. That is all I have. Thank you guys for your attention.
Thank you.
Kyla Dubord. My name is Kyla Dubord, and I am a resident along 45th Street North, and I am here today to share my opinions and my objections. Since we last met with you guys, the last change that was made was the concrete crushing removal. With that change only, we've heard that the staff has approved it, even without the feedback that was given. So support of this criteria, there's two different quotes on page 7 of your packet. The first of those was support of the approval criteria seems pretty flimsy. The second point was, it is the responsibility of the landowner to develop the property in the best possible manner for the neighboring community. So the proposal was pushed back with that type of feedback. You'll also see on page 14 of yours that there was an emphasis on reviewing what the future growth plan will look like rather than on the specific uses. This was in reference to the removal of the concrete crushing and our major opposition to that point. So they said to review what the future growth plan was. If you look at that, what that was, you'll see on page 15, there is a pretty decent answer of what they want to do with the North ETJ, I believe is what they called it, referencing 45th Street North as a road to nowhere in that area. So they did their research and their work on understanding what sort of growth plan changes that area would have, but we have yet to find any additional resources, research or analysis on what our growth plan looks like for this land in particular. That was one of the asks back from the commissioners, and we don't have that information on additional resources that have been put toward that. So there have also been some references to our existing industrial and commercial in the area. Op Construction, as its name, has actually been there since like the 80s or 90s. Well before this 2007 growth plan was put together. So my assumption is that they knew that when they put together this 2007 growth plan, it existed. Memory Fireworks, I couldn't find the exact year it was built. Estimates put that in the early 2000s, so it would be either before or around the time that this 2007 growth plan was put together. So again, the growth plan, knowing that Op Construction existed, still included residential and park right next to it. My neighbors have talked about this too up here, but let's not forget that there is a high demand for residential in Fargo. There's been multiple studies. Paula talked about it as well. Riley's has shown that there is growth potential in North Fargo. You saw the pictures that the realtor had showed, or the real estate agent, my apologies, had shown of what this could look like, what this could be. So you saw that Riley's is growing quite well to the west of us. So we can sell lots in this area, we can build residential there. But in contrast, there hasn't been a statement of need for industrial. So why turn potential residential zoned areas into industrial when there's a need for residential? And this hasn't been answered in terms of analysis done on the future growth plan. So we have to assume that without a change that the 2007 growth plan does still apply. With the reviewed growth plan to the north, again, this project would have to change. There's the one part where there's limited industrial that touches 45th Street that would not be able to exist in that fashion because the ETJ area has now on the north said, hey, we're gonna keep that as residential. We don't wanna put residential next to industrial. So there's really no place for that industrial area to grow. So if it can't go to the north and it can't go to the west, this would literally be a sliver of industrial right surrounded by growing residential area. Also, if you gave this project to a residential developer, just to show again the idea that it can be residential, they would be thrilled at the opportunity. I did this. I tossed this past a friend of mine who is a developer, and I have 2 pages worth of notes of exciting different ways that this could be developed. So I think we can't lose fact of there is the possibility of residential there. I feel like our concerns haven't been addressed, even though they've talked about, yes, we've gone through this, no, we haven't. Our same list of concerns about traffic, our values of our homes, those still exist and haven't been answered. We need to be good neighbors to each other to make this project work in its development for years to come. It needs to be compatible with the existing zoning. Limited industrial and general commercial will hurt our home values. There are no other areas of town where this zoning is as intense and this usage is proposed next to existing residential of our caliber. So this type of zoning just doesn't fit. It's putting a square peg in a round hole. It can be done, of course, awkwardly, but it doesn't make sense, and it isn't being good neighbors. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I believe we will take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at 4:06.
Thank you, ma'am.
4:06, we'll continue the hearing. Just a reminder, if you want to speak, just to state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Krantz. I am on the City of Riley's Acres City Commission Council, and I am in charge. I have the planning and zoning portfolio. I would like to reaffirm the city's position that we still stand in opposition to this commercial and light industrial. As has been mentioned before, light industrial can entail a plethora of things. One of the good examples was Butler Machinery and their front-facing corporate office to a residential area, but what was not shown was the view of Butler Machinery from 36th Street. That is what the residents, our ETJ residents, would have to look at. And we're talking about a 4-foot tall berm against a 30-foot tall warehouse building. We could end up with, 10 E.W. Wiley trucking companies up there, like has moved into the Laverne addition. The other thing that I would like to point out is, while Mills Fleet Farm is a great example of how to manage this, 3 of the 5 entrances to that business are off of 36th Street. So has any study been done? What is the traffic volume in the residential area to the west, to the east of them? What is the traffic volume through those neighborhoods going into Mills Fleet Farm? While it's all great to envision that, every industrial or commercial business that would look at building up there, their front facing is going to be to 43rd Street. Our residents would ultimately end up looking at the dirty side of the business. At this point, I would also like to refer back to the Fargo City Commission meeting of July 10th, and their recommendation to put this forward towards the study of the need for residential and how that fits into the 2024, not 2007 growth plan. I think that at some point, amending the 2007 is a little dangerous since we are so close to, and they, I believe, are in the process of working on that 24 growth plan, that we're going to amend it to sneak it in under the wire. That's what I have for you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gail Prudham, and I'm one of the Prairie Estate people. But what I want you to know is I was a resident of Harwood for 34 years, and all of my friends and neighbors live along the interstate. They have no issues with the traffic or the noise. Just want you to be aware of that.
My name's Tim Hager. I'm also one of the city councilmen with the city of Riley's, also a Riley's Acre resident. I built 5 years ago in the last edition in the 9th. Did I see memory fireworks there? Yes. So did I think there might be some commercial potential? Yes, but that business operates 2 weeks out of the year. And as the zoning map shows, it can't ever be annexed until that permit and use is gone because of the fireworks designation. So we felt safe moving out there, being part of a resident, looking at the 2007 growth plan, seeing that was residential. All of a sudden this comes along and you're asking us to accept a step plan when if you look at the valuation, most of the homes in Riley's Acres and the ETJ are $500,000 plus. So would you take this same development and drop it into one of your larger Silver Creek additions that has higher value homes and expect them to take a 25% decrease in property value because of a little tiny sliver, when then north of there and west of there is going to be all residential? It just doesn't make sense. So we do not support as a city for this to be commercial as well, because it does not fit the growth. It just doesn't make sense to go drop this little sliver in there when you have plenty of land on the east side interstate to continue your growth of industrial and commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this application? Anybody else wish to speak? I'll close the public hearing and then I'm going to give it over to Donald Kress. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Donald.
Commissioners, just I want to clarify something based on the discussion about the environmental factors. We will remind the commission that this department, the planning department, and your commission, the planning commission, makes land use decisions. That's what we make, is land use decisions. In our findings, in our ordinance, land development code, there is no specific environmental finding, as opposed to, like I said, I used to work in Los Angeles County, California. Everything gets an environmental determination before it even goes to hearing. We do not have that here. So we do not enforce any regulation like that here. Those regulations that were cited by our knowledgeable experts here would apply when those uses develop. So when I said we don't have any findings, we don't have any findings for a subdivision, a zone change, or a growth plan to specifically to find anything. You know, what we can't say is, well, gee, applicant, for whatever you are, you meet all the criteria of the subdivision or the zone change, but we think you're going to put something like this business here, so we're going to say no. Because if we did that, we would be violating potentially their due process. We would open ourselves up for a lawsuit for making that decision. So just to clarify, what our experts have said, you know, at the North Dakota level, which is referred to in your staff report, is yes, there is a North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality or Quality Division. I've talked to them, and what they say is no doubt true. But what we are doing here and the decision we are making here does not include that. We are making a land use decision. Just to clarify that for you. Thank you.
Donald, on that note,
Yes, sir.
when a building permit is, you guys see the building permits.
I personally do not.
Well,
But planning commission, the planning department reviews all site plans and building permits except for single-family residences and some smaller stuff. So commercial and industrial, yes, we would.
And when that happens, is there a review of what is going to take place there?
Well, the use, as you know, the testifiers were concerned with, yes. So the use gets matched up with anything that's on there. So the zoning, in this case, would be the conditional overlay. Your commission has approved various planned unit developments, PUDs over the years, so it would be matched up with whatever that is. So yeah, you've got to make sure that the use is allowed on that lot, in that location. That's correct, sir.
And if there were any red flags, there'd be more of an investigation?
Well, it's reviewed by several departments, you know, planning, fire, engineering, public works. I don't really know what, I'm not a plan reviewer myself. So, Mr. Williams, I don't know, can you know the answer on that one there?
I think the biggest answer would be inspections would be going over the building as far as how it meets all the IBC and all the other requirements as outlined in their codes.
Okay. Question?
Just a question of clarity in the conditional overlay. It does prohibit the use of concrete crushing there. Obviously, I think we're all on board with that. There was comment during testimony that asphalt crushing could also be done in the LI zoning. Is there, I guess, the way that the conditional overlay is written, does concrete crushing also cover any other kind of crushing?
Your
like that?
commission might wish to recommend that we specify asphalt crushing as well, just to make that clear, Commissioner.
Any other questions for Donald? Okay. Oh, Commissioner?
I'm gonna get this answered right now, I guess. Donald, on the conditional overlay,
Yes, sir.
on the bottom note, it says lots 5 and 8 will be zoned PI. Why would lot 5 be?
Sorry, should be, sorry.
Is that lot 2?
Yep.
Okay,
Which one?
okay. Thank you.
Right, yes, sir. Thanks for correcting that. Yes, lot 2 and 8, you are correct, sir.
Any other questions for Donald? Okay, I will invite the applicant up.
Donald, can you bring up the zoning again?
This one?
No, the actual overlay for the proposed changes.
I don't know if I have a.
Like this one right here.
Oh,
It's in
the,
planning, it's in the.
the growth
staff
plan.
That one right there.
There you go.
If you look at at ours over there, and we have, they're fighting the general commercial and the industrial, they're pretty much everything that we want to do. But if you look at what they're doing in their own residential, they're putting general commercial in their residential on that new 40th Avenue. If you look right to the west, I don't know if you see that, they're right along 40, no, right there to the left a little bit more, right there. That's general commercial for them. They're doing that right in their own residential area. They're putting some of that. So I don't know exactly why they're fighting the general commercial at all next to the residential when they're doing it themselves. Also, in the neighborhood right next to us, there is a Real Wings decoy factory that they have there that they put decoys, which is industrial. It's in a residential area, but it's an industrial manufacturing facility that they're putting decoys together. Right to the south of that is one Priority Transportation. I don't know what kind of transportation company it is there. Then you also have a Thurlsine and Sons cabinet building. They have a bunch of cabinet building going on there, which is manufacturing, which is industrial, right in that same development in the housing. So I'm a little lost for words that we can't do what we can do, but they can do what they want to do.
The comments from the public have to do with the existing growth plan and the amended growth plan. And that was one of the issues that was brought up by the city commission, is to explore what the growth plan would look like, what it's going to look like next year. And what is on the screen and what you have on the left side is the existing growth plan, and on the right side is the proposed plan amendment. So that specific area of concern from the Fargo City Commission is being addressed here today with the proposed growth plan amendment. You will see for the property that we are here for today that it will be, it is proposed to be amended to light industrial and general commercial. So that area of concern is being addressed. The other issue that has been brought up that is, there's this fixation on the air quality and the type of facilities that would be allowed in light industrial that have to do with general crushing of all sorts of construction products. And there is a difference between zoning light industrial and permitting the actual business. So just because this area is zoned as light industrial does not mean that a crushing business or any type of asbestos business or anything that puts particles in the air would actually be permitted, because they would have to pass all of the state and federal regulations that come along with it. So the concern was that it had to be at least half a mile away from residential. If that's the case, then no business that comes in that does that type of work or has that type of operation would ever be permitted here in the first place. So just because it's an allowed use in this type of zoning area does not mean that it will actually exist because of the permitting process that is there. And I know that none of the residents of Riley's Acres are going to say this specifically, but I'll come out and say it. I don't think they're going to be happy unless this is actually residential with 1 acre lots for $500,000 homes. They're not going to say that here at this commission. They're not going to say it at the Fargo Commission, but that is exactly what's happening because you have an owner that proposed a specific plan for industrial that was approved by the staff. This commission denied it based on several concerns that they had raised. So the developer, Mr. Duda, had amended the plan, got rid of the crushing, which was the biggest problem at the last hearing where this was brought up. That is completely gone. Now they're coming up with other reasons. And so what you have here is a city and residents that aren't going to allow anything other than what they want to be done. But the Fargo Planning Code and Development Code exists for a reason. And ARD Properties has done everything that's been asked of them 3 times. And it has been approved. The criteria has been approved 3 times by your own staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
For the applicant? Okay.
Related to that last point, you said it'd have to be permitted. And originally, we were talking, a concrete crushing plant. That was certainly the developer's intention. What permit, where would you get that permitted? You stated they would have to be permitted. Who would offer that permit and where would you go?
Well, I think the city of Fargo has to permit everything that goes in up there. You have to let them know what you're doing, and from what I understand. And just so you guys know, it's all crushing that's taken out. It's all crushing.
I'm
It's
just
asphalt
saying,
crushing.
I'm just saying specifically, where would that permit come from? Who would I approach for that permit?
The city of Fargo.
City of Fargo. So who would evaluate whether it was a safe use to get that permit?
City of
Anybody?
Fargo. The building permit application has to be made with the city.
Yep.
Sure, it's a building permit. I'm just curious because it seemed like, well, you don't have to worry about a dangerous thing coming in because it'll get permitted. Would the city deny it?
I would say that they probably would. I mean, if you want
Based
to
on
put a
what?
slaughterhouse up there, they would deny that, wouldn't you think?
Possibly, yeah.
Well, I would guess that they would, but that's just.
I'm just asking,
Yeah.
maybe somebody else can explain to me who would actually look at that issue that would be permitted. Yeah.
Madam Chairman, if I can answer that.
Absolutely.
So, as everyone has here stated, whatever you build, so let's try to make a little real-world example here. So let's say that, I bought lot 15 and wanted to develop something on it, and I look at the uses allowed in LI, which was referred to by the testifiers, and is also handily stated on the front of your staff report. And I look at that and I see, well, some uses are, so I can't have a detention facility, I can't build a jail or an adult facility. All these other things are allowed. So I can say, well, I will, develop that as a vehicle repair shop there on lot 15. So I submit my building permit for vehicle repair, and it circulates between several departments, and there are standards that have to be met. So as you all know, there's building standards, fire code standards, landscaping, paving, whatnot. And those are all met there. But that vehicle service is allowed. Now, if I'm gonna be draining out oil, then I've got to, meet the requirement. I got to have someplace to put the oil and so on. So all those various codes and regulations that get reviewed have to be met during that time of review. Is that an answer to your question, sir?
Yeah, they might be, but who would do the evaluation?
Well, the
Let's
staff,
say-
the staff and all, like I said, I myself, and I'm not a plan reviewer, but several of our staff are.
Right, and I
Inspections
don't-
department.
Yeah, I don't
We all
expect the
sign
planning
off on it.
department to do those things,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah. Well, all the departments sign off on their part of it.
If I can jump in here.
Yes, please.
So in essence, the planning department would review the land use side of the building permit. And if it was auto sales, we would go through our review and make sure that auto sales is allowed in here, and then we go through our dimensional standards and check it off. After that, it's going to be a whole plethora of different departments and agencies that ensure the safety of the operation of that. It's going to be a combination of the fire department, building inspections department, environmental health, OSHA. Sometimes we find things that have been dumped in the sanitary sewer, and then wastewater gets involved. So it's a whole combination of different entities that are constantly sort of monitoring based on inspections or based on complaints. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think what you're saying is that, let's say environmental quality might say, wait a second, that we have some concerns about that before you sign that permit. We want to know a little bit more about it before we would sign off.
Yeah, for instance, if there was some sort of manufacturing facility and they have to follow all the requirements outlined for painting, and the contained units and the filtering, and based on a couple different agencies that enforce that.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I?
Question for applicant or for any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For Donald?
I guess I'm just waiting for general discussion.
Sure.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the findings of staff as presented on the screen and as stated by the applicant that there is no crushing of any sort involved on this development.
I have a motion?
I have maybe a procedural question, if that's allowed.
You gotta have a second.
I was gonna say, we do a second and then we'll go to discussion.
I'll take a second.
I have first and a second. So go ahead, we will open discussion now between us.
Sure, and I think to John's motion, you stated about the crushing, and earlier I had asked Donald about crushing asphalt. Could I make a motion to include in the conditional overlay not allowing asphalt crushing? Does that make sense?
I believe he eliminated all
I
crushing.
said all crushing.
Okay,
All crushing of all materials.
okay.
So I think we could,
Then I'll withdraw my motion.
We could specify that, ma'am, yes, if that's commission's direction, we could specify that.
okay.
I have just a general comment, if I may, Madam Chair. I think we are getting really caught up in the details of this application. And when I take a look at just very simply an individual purchased land that was undeveloped and it was zoned for residential. And he asked and was given a general go-ahead to proceed with industrial work, and then later on found out that he needed to come through the city of Fargo. The way our current growth plan is, this use is not allowed. We are in the beginning stages of embarking on a major growth plan change. And my concern, if we approve this motion, is that we are going to see multiple applications sneaking in growth plan changes while we are in the process of reviewing and looking ahead to the future of our community. So in my mind, it's quite simply, the application doesn't fit with the existing zoning, and I cannot vote to approve that.
So I will say, if we vote to deny, we need criteria that is not satisfied. So just so you know, that if we vote to deny, we do need to focus on a specific criteria to send to city commission. Any other Comments, thoughts?
Well, I think that, I felt all along that there's no way that you're gonna have residential in that spot, right along the interstate. It's been sitting there for an awful long time. I had some concerns about, some activity that might come up there that would impact on what we intended to be residential, and I think that's been removed. Yes, we are in the midst of working on a growth plan. I get that. But a growth plan is a document that's living and changing as we go. And we recognize during that process that maybe our next growth plan, when we look at what we've done over a period of time in these kind of circumstances, our growth plan would probably reflect that in terms of what our land uses would be there. And I have no doubt that if we were having a growth plan discussion right now, that's probably what that would look like in this location. So I think that there's enough protection here for the landowners around there, the people in those developments, that I think that this is a good use at this point.
So as a matter of that protection, I think that's where there's a single piece I'm concerned with. I think the setbacks that have been done on the west side are outstanding. I can't think of anywhere else in town we've got that much separation between general commercial and residential. The crux of it for me comes down to that lot 9, which is marked as limited industrial and comes right up on 45th Street. So as we look at the growth plan, across 45th to the west is marked as residential. So that is the one area we don't have that step down that we do on the lots further to the south. If that lot 9 was, for example, a general commercial, I think that would keep the theme going up that west side, would give protection for what is the likely residential development off to the west.
Any other comments, discussion before we take the roll? Donald, Kress.
Ma'am, would Commissioner Shui want to make that part of the motion too about the zoning on lot 9?
We can do that.
I believe that you can make recommendations on that.
Okay. I mean,
You're the chair, but
Do we amend the current? How does that work?
You can move to amend the current motion.
Can I please remind everyone that the majority of Lot 9 is already zoned limited industrial? We are not rezoning it to limited industrial?
okay, there is this portion of it, as the overlay, but that would get rid of that overlay, wouldn't it?
I think the concern that I would have is that's the bridge to the growth plans residential off to the west, right? And that, which seems like we've got this sliver of LI. I think the city commission's question was in part, what does that do for other expansion out there? And that's where my mind thinks of how do we carry this around. The general commercial makes perfect sense. There are pockets of general commercial all along that road that carries across the interstate exchange as well too, to still have that general commercial. So, my concern is just making sure that there's a clear delineated buffer. We're gonna have a sliver of LI. It needs to be completely landlocked and isolated, so there's no risk of it expanding to the west or the north.
Commissioner Shui, just to reinforce what Mr. Williams is saying, this is that piece that has the continuous zoning with the Riley Acres to the north. Or with that, not Riley Acres, ops.
With ops, which has been that way for, a few decades and seems pretty limited in its scope though as well too. As you said, op is pretty much limited just to that particular type of business in that particular spot.
Okay, so do we?
Can we do that? Mark, can we do this? If it's already done, do we have the authority to change lot 9 to general commercial?
Yeah, you can downgrade a zoning on a specific lot based on a request.
You couldn't move it up probably, but you can step it down.
Yeah, we
But it
have
has to
no
be, does that have to be a
control.
request from an applicant, or is that, or do we have the authority internally here to do that?
I think you could ask the applicant what their opinion is on that, but we have no authority over the op construction that's already zoned, limited industrial too.
Right.
Do you want to ask the
So-
applicant?
Sure, let's try it. Trent?
Trent, yeah. Mr. Duda, do you want to?
So, I'm not sure if you guys know that, but on the west side, if you want to bring that map up, so there's gonna be a road that goes up to Op, so they're already, I don't know if you consider that another buffer, but there's another
Yeah.
40-foot wide easement
Yeah, let me just show.
that's gonna be going up to the north. If you want to show them.
Yes, sir, I had standby one. Yeah, it's this, right?
Yeah, so there's gonna be more that goes up there, so that's even gonna even more narrow that lot.
Yeah.
So that'll be a road that goes up to Op right there. So in that, that industrial lot that's right next to Op, which is industrial. So, if you guys really see fit that it needs to be general commercial, I'm not gonna fight you. But I'd rather keep it industrial if we could.
Oh, do you need to see that again, Commissioner?
What's in between lot 9 and 10? Is there an easement there, or what is? Can those lots be combined?
I think that's a water main easement,
That's what-
easement between both.
That's a
those.
water main easement.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
can't be combined, right?
Well, they could still be combined at some point.
But the build out, you couldn't build on it.
Yeah, you couldn't build
So,
on that water main at all.
I guess I'm okay with leaving it because it's a small lot, so even though if it was LI, it's not likely to be a major.
Yeah, you're not gonna
user
have anything major that
Because
goes in
of
there.
the entrance, you're not gonna get much of a turn in there, and also if there's a road between that and the residential, I think then it's probably okay. I was concerned that it was a
Yeah,
little bit off, but in those situations, I'm okay with leaving it.
In the first proposal, was that the utility easement that was further to the south? And it was redrawn? to-
no, the first
or was that-
proposal was this one,
Okay,
where the utility easement goes. There's two utility easements up there. There's one for Op that goes up to the north, that'll feed them sewer and water if they ever want to annex in. And then there's another one right there that he's pointing out. That's a water easement that makes a loop through the city for Amazon.
but
And all
in an
those
earlier
people.
presentation, was that water easement further to the south?
That water easement, I switched it, when I proposed to put the crushing up to the north. I moved that water line to the south more. And then now that we're taking out the crushing, I just put it all to the north. I put it back because the city wanted that water line up there. They were trying to, if I could get that passed through, then we would have moved it south. But means I didn't, I moved it back north.
So it could reasonably be moved between 10 and 11?
Not
for
anymore.
example.
They've already started. They've already started the construction on it. It's already been let out. So the water line's in place now. Like, there's nothing I can do about it now.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Duda.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? We ready to take the roll? Oh.
So is the motion just with the specification about the crushing then?
I believe so. I do not believe has been an amendment. Unless somebody would like to make an amendment to that original motion.
Excuse me. I would be willing to make that lot 9 just general commercial to definitely keep things contained so that it does not have any continuation. And we'd have that step down from the LI to general commercial to the growth plans residential.
Except you have the one right above it already.
Well, you can't change what's been there for 30 years though too. So, and then that one it sounded like it was a very restrictive LI to the north. It's pretty specific to that particular business. I'm not worried, it doesn't seem that there's a lot of concern of that one bleeding into other residential areas, right?
Except it could change hands.
Sure, there's a risk, but I think that's where, hopefully by making a very clear statement here, there's some, I guess, at least theoretical precedent, if nothing else.
Okay, let's make that amendment to the motion then?
Sure, yeah,
We can do-
I'll move to change lot 9 to general commercial.
Okay.
That
Okay.
covers- Need a second to that.
Yes, now I need a second.
Second.
All right, first and a second, and any other discussion before we take?
We just
Have
need
to vote on the
have a
amendment.
Voice amendment, a voice vote at least amongst us, probably.
Is this a roll call?
Oh, a voice to add it to the amendment, you mean?
Yeah, to the,
Yes.
To the motion.
to the motion.
Is that roll call or is it voice?
I would recommend a roll call vote on the amendment, and then after that, then you'll need to
Okay.
vote on the original motion.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take the roll then.
Holt,
On the amendment, just to be clear, right?
Just
We're
the
taking
motion
the
to the
roll
amendment.
Yep.
on the amendment to add the step down to the GC. Okay,
Holtz,
No.
Rosenberg,
No.
Morgan. Oh, sorry.
not here.
Schmidt,
No.
Stoffern,
Yes.
Tassa,
No,
Shuey,
Aye.
and Gunkelman.
No,
I wasn't keeping track. That I'm a rookie, yeah.
Now we're back to the original.
Just- Thank you. Okay, we're back to the
Original.
original motion. Any discussion before we take the roll on the original motion? Okay, take the roll. Do we need a refresher on the original motion? Be clear? Okay.
Holtz,
No.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Shuey,
No.
Gunkelman.
aye.
And motion, or the application passes, motion passes. I just want to take a moment to say thank you for all of the applicants, all of the neighbors who continue to testify for numerous planning commissions here. We appreciate all of your comments, all of your work in meetings to come to the best conclusion that we could to, yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of your assistance in this process and also for planning. Thank you. We will go ahead and we will move to, let me get my sheet here.
Item 2.
Item number 2, this is a hearing on the application of the plat of Laverne's Third Edition. Donald Kress to present.
Thank you, ma'am. So actually just moving down 45th Street here a little bit and off to the east, this is Laverne's Third Edition. This is 45th Street here and Drain 40, so our last project was right up here. This is a proposal to combine 4 undeveloped lots in Laverne's Second Edition into one larger lot. As you see, they are undeveloped, pretty much an open field here. Looking across on a couple of corners there. There is some development in Laverne's as well already there. The zoning here is LI, limited industrial. There is no proposed change. The plat looks like this, about as easy a plat as you're going to get there, combining 4 lots into one. The applicant's representative, Brian Pattengale of Houston Engineering, is with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission. Staff's recommendation is stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes staff's presentation on that item.
Thank you, Donald. Commissioners, any questions for Donald? No? The applicant? Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anybody wish to comment on this application?
Hi, Commissioners. Nate Volbuth, just speaking as a resident. I just, can you bring up the aerial quick,
Yes, sir.
Donald? I'll keep this very short, very brief, but I just wanted to bring up the point that this is another large industrial development that is kitty corner from Riley's Acres. That was not discussed or opposed to by anyone from Riley's Acres. which is very interesting considering how long we've discussed another development that is right next to them as well. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak on this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion per staff's recommendation.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? Okay, let's take the roll.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Thank you,
Motion
commissioners.
passes. Moving right along, agenda, public hearing, item number 3 by Luke. We're hearing on an application request of a plat of Timber Parkway 10th Edition.
Thank you, Commissioners. Luke Mormon with the Planning Department. Item number 3 is Timber Parkway 10th Edition. It's located at 5161 Charles Way. To give you some context, we have, if you follow my cursor on the screen, it's Timber Parkway South, 52nd Avenue South, Jacks Way, and Charles Way just on the north side of the property. The applicant is requesting a minor subdivision entitled Timber Parkway 10th Edition, which is a replat of Lot 2, Block 1, Timber Parkway 5th Edition. These are currently undeveloped. For some site photos, you have facing west on the top picture. Across the property from Timber Parkway, you can see 52nd Street South, or 52nd Avenue, and then Charles Way. And then on the bottom, we are facing southeast from Charles Way, and then you can see the intersection between Timber Parkway and 52nd Avenue on the right side of the screen. The zone is GC, General Commercial, and no zone changes proposed. Here's the proposed plat, which will split one lot into two, and the overall boundaries aren't changed. It's just adding one property line down the middle, and staff has received no inquiries in response to this project. We find that all criteria to be met and are recommending approval. The applicant, Blake Carlson, is here to answer any questions, and that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Any questions for Blake, commissioners?
Is that 31st Street to the north, or that road that dead ends? Is there any reason that would that ever extend onto Timber Parkway?
Which street are you referencing?
The right up at the north side of the property. It looks like it Charles, or is that Charles Way?
Yep, Charles Way.
Will that just always end on its own there? It won't connect into Timber Parkway?
It does currently connect to Timber Parkway. I'll
Okay.
pull up the aerial imagery, but yeah, this is a little out-of-date aerial imagery, but
gotcha. Okay.
they're currently under construction to the north of it as well. But there's also a negative access easement here around the opening, so there wouldn't be any additional access to Timber Parkway.
Thanks.
Luke, the photograph shows that.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Luke, where is the Mexican restaurant? Is that in lot 1, lot 2 then? Or is that over one more?
It's just west of it, so
Okay.
from the picture here, you can see it existing there across the undeveloped lots. It's in this property here.
Lot 1? Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Luke?
Move to accept staff findings.
Second.
Oh, did we do a public hearing part?
Wait, yeah, I was gonna say, I think I need to invite the applicant and do a public hearing. I know we really want to get, all right, I'll invite the applicant up. Do you guys have questions?
You might ruin it.
Chewy's ready to go.
You might wreck it. Just go sit down.
yeah. Okay, anybody wish to speak on this application? Anybody wish to speak? Closing the public hearing. Okay, now we'll go ahead.
Hey,
and take-
now I'll move to accept staff findings.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, take the roll.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Shuey.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, We continue with Luke. We are hearing on an application requesting a conditional use permit on 45th Street Park, 3rd Edition.
Thank you. Item 4 on your agenda is 45th Street Park, 3rd Edition, which is located at 200 and 300 45th Street South. You have Main Avenue up top, and then 45th Street, which runs on the left side of the property, and then 2nd Avenue South is abutting the north side of or north property line. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow manufacturing and production in the general commercial zone. It is currently an office building that's intended to be fit up with manufacturing and production uses. For some site photos, we're facing southeast on the top and looking towards the existing building along from the parking lot along 45th Street South. And then on the bottom, we're facing southwest from 2nd Avenue South, showing the rear of the building as well as the north side of the building. The zone is currently GC, general commercial, and no zone change is proposed. The CUP will fall under the existing zone to allow those uses. Staff has received no inquiries in response to this project. We find that all criteria are met and recommending approval with the conditions shown. And please note that the recommendation in the staff report has a typo in it, but the one shown on the screen is correct, specifying manufacturing and production uses in the general commercial zone. The applicant, Nate Fallmuth, is here to answer any questions, and that concludes staff's presentation. There's also one more note, as stated in the staff report. There's also any appeal to the Planning Commission decision goes to the City Commission and has a 10-day appeal period. So, thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Any questions for Luke?
Yep. Luke, is this for the entire area, all the buildings in there? Or is this for just one section? Is it for the whole building?
Well, the next item goes to the property to the south, as you'll see, but it is really one building. So I'm not sure, I guess the applicant could speak to what tenant areas or if it's the entire building itself.
But in this, you're asking us to approve converting this entire building to these uses?
Right, they would be allowed on the entire lot.
In that entire building, all the square footage?
Yep,
Okay.
as long as it met other land development code standards.
So is there a way from the planning commission side to limit that to a certain amount of square footage and not allow this entire building to be going to that level? Is that allowed, or do we have to, either it's all or none?
I believe it would be allowed, but
I think maybe we'll have the applicant speak to what they want to do inside this building. It wasn't my understanding that the entirety of the building was going to be industrial. I think it was just a portion.
But that's the motion and the stuff that I'm reading. I'm not saying that what they're gonna do is proper. I'm just reading what we're gonna approve here, and that tells me it's the entire building we're approving.
The conditional use permit allows industrial use within this building.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, invite the applicant up again.
Thank you, Commissioners. Nate Vonwith with Goldmark Design. The intention is essentially the back, I don't know if, or Luke, sorry, can you go to the picture of the building, just to bring some perspective? The intention is for the back portion of the building for this use. This building, I wasn't around when this was designed, but this building was designed with this intent originally. It has essentially business retail or office retail on first and second floor on the front of the building, and then on the back side of the building, it's a two-story space. So essentially, this one and the next one, it's taking the two-story space and converting it into this type of use, which this one and the other one are both going to be clean room type things where they're going to manufacture, one of them they're going to manufacture ventilators, medical ventilators. And so it's not the intention of the entire building. I don't know if there's a way to restrict it. I think The applicant can be open to that, but they definitely do not want to convert the front half because it's got visibility to the street and it's more marketable than to have this type of use, so.
Any questions for the applicant?
Nate, if I could throw a little humor in tonight, is there another COVID outbreak coming that we're building ventilators?
I hope not.
I just had to.
I hope
Okay.
not.
Of course
Thanks,
you did.
John, we needed that.
Okay, I need the.
Yeah, I got a question for Nate.
Okay,
So can we nail this down to medical device, or is there a way we can do some limitations? I don't like this size of a building having a free reign
Sure.
down the road, because once we do this, it's
So,
hard to change.
to that point, the CUP, and Luke can correct me if I'm wrong, but the CUP was made out for two specific users. One is Imicor and one is called Corvent. If, for instance, and they already have their spaces identified on the backside. If, for instance, Commissioner Gunkelman's company wants to come in to build ventilators, he would also have to come in to have that, and we'd have to review it again. So I don't know if that answers the question, but like the rest of the building wouldn't be able to be converted without coming back in to request again, because we've already labeled the specific users for these two different conditional use permits.
Okay, but again, I'm asking the question, when I see the motion and I see the subject property, it's the whole building. I don't think they have to come back in. Why would they have to come back in if they're gonna stay within those guidelines? So if a fourth or fifth medical device company wanted to come in there, I don't think they have to come back here. They have to get a permit, building permit, but why would they have to come back here? Because the subject property is the entire building. Unless we do something to limit it, but when I'm looking at the motion, that's what the motion says, correct? Am I missing something, Mark?
You could certainly amend the motion or make a motion that states the actual user's name, and if they no longer cease to exist
Okay.
in this piece of property, then
And
they
it's,
would have to
it's
come
more,
back.
more also just wanting to understand that as the commission, if we decide to do this and we didn't do this, the way I'm reading this, they wouldn't have to come in to do industrial work in that building again, unless it was something that, but, you know, they still have to get a building permit, I understand that portion, but they technically wouldn't have to come to this commission to do something the same. If another medical device company wanted another 10,000 square feet in there, they would bypass this, the way I'm reading the motion right now.
Sure, and I guess maybe I would suggest that the CUP more looks at, is industrial service appropriate in this area? And not to be so specific as far as the square footage and the user. We're finding that industrial service is getting to be a lot more compatible with surrounding land uses, unlike they were 50, 75 years ago.
I don't disagree, I agree with you, but it's medical device or it's industrial uses that are different, clean rooms, things like that. It's not just standard, somebody pounding away and building stuff in there with metal shavings everywhere and, you know, you're right, but we don't have a luxury because LI is whatever this long of things that are included or not included in that process. But if we can come up with some kind of a limitation for this and allow others to come in, I'm fine with it. But if we can name the companies and do it that way, I'd be okay with that. Otherwise, I'm not supportive of it.
So, I'm sorry if I can interrupt or if you're finished. So the CUP also does cover, though, it covers the expansion, and it also covers if any manufacturing terminates or stops for a period. So to my mind, that would mean that any change in use or production, so it does not allow any hazardous chemicals, does not allow any manufacturing production of hazardous chemicals or expansion of manufacturing or production uses would require an amendment and approval by the planning commission. So to my mind, that covers the space.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 4,
4, okay, thank you.
In the staff recommendation.
right above it, under the so continuing from page 3 of 4, the recommended conditions.
Okay.
But I agree with you, except the point is, this is approving the entire building. So that would be an expansion beyond the building scope, because the subject property is circled, is that box, which includes that entire building. So I don't disagree, but if we said this company, whatever company this is approved, and then they can't expand or they can't do anything, then I'm fine with it. But the way I still interpret this is that it's once we approve this, we approve the building, because we make no specific mention that this is 6,000 square feet and this is for this purpose. We just talk about converting this entire building into that. So if we can make that adjustment or add the company in here, I'm fine with it.
I'm agreeable to that, either specifying square footage or naming the company specifically.
If we name the company, do we need to name successors as well if they're sold, just to cover them?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they want to be named.
Sure.
You know, that's the other.
I believe in the application that a company is named specifically, and it says their specific use in the application that we made to the city. So that's already public record. So I would think that that would be fine. The only thing I would, and I don't think I don't believe the commission is going there, but I wouldn't want to specifically say a certain, I think we could say like the back half of the building is where it's going to be at. But for instance, the occupant load is such that I need to send in a fire, I would need to send some people out through the front of the building. So I wouldn't want it to be like that would be restricted. I think the other part too to talk about is we're currently going through the review process. Our architectural firm is with the client, and a lot of the things that were mentioned in regards to any chemicals, all those different things that they may or may not have is coming up in the review process, and we are having to provide documentation to the inspections department regarding those items.
I'll add I have the application and it says just to clarify, the Immercore, I don't know if
Yep.
is the user of this building.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant?
So Art, would you, if you just physically described the two-story area that's not, doesn't have two levels, which is all the office buildings around front that circulate it, and just have somehow physically describe that and within the building and limit that to this changed use. And we don't have to necessarily know the square footage today, but maybe if that would work for you.
Yeah, or we can just name the company and just say that any expansion or anything else needs to be approved. We just include their application and their usage that's going to be approved hopefully by the building permit process.
Make whatever motion you prefer.
Yeah.
Let me open
Excuse
public-
me,
Yeah,
from a planning department's perspective, I'd like that defined a little bit better, either that two-story rear half of the building or the specific use. It's going to be very challenging to be able to monitor this permit through time as this business may expand or contract. One option is we could continue it till next month and get the specific square foots of where this is being proposed and bring that back and make the conditions around that. It would also give us some time to be able to maybe identify businesses if we want to get into that much detail. I think once we start getting in that much detail, it gets to be very challenging for staff to be able to monitor it. Another option is we could just say that the industrial service is limited to manufacturing of medical supplies, something on that order.
Nate?
I'd like to add, Commission, just to that a little bit. It's not quite as simple as, we're requesting the use because that's what they need to do, but they also have an office function as well. I would say 50% of it is actually probably an office function with conference rooms and open office and private offices. So, the manufacturing, and it's all actually in the back, but if you were to limit it to a location, I mean, some of it is actually allowed wherever in the building. So I think to name the specific user, and if there is an expansion of any sorts that we have to come back, was perfectly fine. I can also tell you, the building is roughly 240,000 square feet, and each user is taking roughly 20,000 square feet on the back side of the building.
Are you okay with, can we wait a month? Is that gonna screw you up so we can be specific, or?
I'd rather give you the specifics today,
Okay.
if that's possible.
If we have the specifics, Mark, then is planning okay?
Sure.
Because I'd rather not do half a building or do anything like that, especially with office and the combination of things that happen with a business, give them the flexibility. But I just don't think 240,000 square feet of a free-for-all makes sense.
What about not to exceed X amount of square footage of the building?
Yeah.
Would there be what you're saying, 20%, if we were to give you some leeway, say 20% of the building?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. So, I'm sorry, I'm crossing over because I have another one right after this for
Yes.
the other use. So this one's for the 200 building, I believe, which is the bigger of the two buildings. That is essentially a 20,000 square foot user for that building. The next one we'll talk about is the same, roughly same size user with the similar type of use. If you want to put in specifically, 20,000 square feet for this specific user, and the use needs to be concentrated towards the rear of the building, I mean, and if it changes, then we need to come back, or however you want to do it. I mean, we can get fairly specific if you need to.
Getting in this type of specifics when it comes to land use can be extremely challenging. If we were going to mention 20,000 square foot in the condition of approval, I would recommend maybe 25 or 28,000, because time and time again, they're going to come in and it's going to be 20,100 square foot, and we're going to be back here.
Yeah, I guess I'm just really uncomfortable with how nuanced we're getting, because really, as a commission, I feel we're tasked to understand, is this the right land use for, or does this project fit the land use at this site? And really stepping back and taking a look at what's around this site fits right in with the manufacturing of it. And I think that the conditional overlay, or the conditional use permit outlines it really well, that if any alterations to the manufacturing, whether it expands or contracts, would have to come before us again. It just feels like we're getting too much in the weeds. And since I've been in the commission, I've never come across a project where we start specifying minimum square footage. We're talking about maybe 10% of this total building's footprint that would be manufacturing. That's very small, but even if it was 100%, it would fit in with the context of this area around here. It's also an existing building that functionally you can clearly see what's commercial retail function of the building versus what's manufacturing. So even from a purely functional standpoint, there wouldn't be manufacturing put into those retail looking and functioning areas. Even so, if they did expand, they'd have to come before us again, regardless, because of how this is written. So I would not be in favor of starting to include square footages on here, as I believe that what's before us by staff is appropriate at this time.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Let me open the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this agenda item? Anybody wish to speak? Seeing none, go ahead and close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion per staff's recommendation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? No discussion? We'll go ahead and take the roll.
Tassa,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Stoffern,
All right.
Holtz,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
No.
Shui,
No.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Motion passes, and that was for agenda item number 4. Now we'll move to agenda item number 5. Luke, to continue.
Item 5 on your agenda, very similar, but a different property, but it's entitled 45th Street Park 5th Edition. This is located at 400 45th Street South. Again, Main Avenue, 45th Street, and then 2nd Avenue South on the north portion of the property, or a little further to the north of the property. The applicant is again requesting a conditional use permit to allow the manufacturing and production uses in the general commercial zone. There's existing office buildings to be fit up with manufacturing and production uses. Then a little different view from the of the building, looking northeast across from the parking lot near 45th Street. This is on the top, and then on the bottom, it is facing northwest across the subject property from the rear parking lot, which shows the rear of the building, and then the south side of the building. This is currently zoned GC, general commercial, and no zone changes proposed. The CUP would allow the manufacturing and production uses within it. Staff has received no inquiries in response to the project. Again, staff finds all criteria to be met and are recommending approval with the conditions shown on the screen. Again, the staff report is incorrect, but the one shown on the screen has the correction made for manufacturing and production specifically. And the applicant is still here for questions, and that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay,
Just, thank you, Commissioners. That'll take 30 seconds. Just because it was asked previously in a previous planning commission by Commissioner Morgan, who's not here today. She asked me last time I was here for a conditional use permit if converting office space to other uses is a trend. And this is a direct reflection of a very large office building, essentially a cube farm, that COVID essentially cleaned out. And this is one of the uses that is being inquired about on this property and various other office buildings in town. So I just wanted to put that context in, if it matters or not at this particular stage. Thank you.
thank you.
So will this one cover the entire use the entire building, or was this still just a portion, like the last one?
No, this is the back half, the
This is
two-story
back half
portion.
deal. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? I'll go ahead and open public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Anybody wish to speak? I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion per staff recommendation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? No.
I think I just still have the same concern, Art, that you brought up before, right?
Okay, let's take the roll.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Shui,
No.
Tassa,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Rosenberg.
No.
Motion passes. Moving on to item number 6, hearing on an application. Wait a minute, commissioners. Do you want to break or should we roll? Okay. Hearing on application requesting a zoning change from SR2 to SR3, Wentz Edition. Brad, to present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brad Garcia with the Department of Planning and Development. Item number 6 on today's agenda is, as you stated, the zoning change from SR2 single dwelling residential to SR3 single dwelling residential. property is located at 2320 22nd Street South. And just a little orientation here is 18th Street South is here, and then you have 25th Avenue South. The interstate, I-94, is just to the north here. And then this is located in the Brunsdale neighborhood. And here's some pictures looking at the subject property. This is facing southeast, again, kind of heavily wooded and traditional residential neighborhood. And the bottom one is facing northwest. And here's just some perspective on the zone, the adjacent zoning for the properties. Again, so the applicant is looking to make an addition and reinvest into his property, but the current zoning has limitations on its setbacks. And so that's the reason for the zoning change, is to give it a little bit more room so that he can add or make a small addition to the property. Additionally, on this next slide here, the existing zoning kind of places the existing home in like a non-compliance. Again, this was zoned originally with the previous land development code, which is actually, it was zoned R1A. And with that, they didn't have, or there wasn't a street designated setback in that zoning code. So it really had two side or interior setbacks. When it was converted to the current zoning code, it was converted to SR2, and being on a corner, it has that street side setback requirement. So you can kind of see the limitations of trying to add any add to the home. Additionally, our code doesn't allow continuing nonconformities if they already exist. So again, getting it to the SR3 zoning will get most, if not all, of the nonconformities into compliance, and it should allow enough room for the applicant to make additions to the home as he has plans. Staff did receive one inquiry on this application, and but the person didn't have any objection, just more curious of what it was about. The applicant, Rob Lugert, is with us this afternoon to answer any questions if the commission has. Pending any questions, this concludes staff's presentation.
Thanks, Brad. Any questions for Brad? No. Any questions for the applicant? Applicant here? Okay. Do you have anything to add? Okay. All right. I will open the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Anybody wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the findings and recommendation of staff.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and take the roll.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving right along to hearing, to agenda item number 7, hearing on application requesting a plat of Buchholz Edition. Donald Kress? There he is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 7 is the Buchholz Edition, located here on 43rd Street North and 14th Avenue North. Interestingly, to tie our cases together, this is the same drain 40 and 45th Street that we've been talking about on and off all afternoon here. The proposal here is a minor subdivision to take the existing 2 lots and replat them into 3 lots. As you see, there are a couple of existing buildings there, and so they'll be platting around the existing buildings. Here's what this looks like. Again, the 14th Avenue North property frontage. This is facing along 43rd Street. Bueller is, I understand, no longer there, but their sign is still there for some reason. And then this is 45th Street here in the foreground, and this is facing the back of the lot here, and over this is the little levee here, and on the other side of that is drain 40, because that does figure in to this plat. The zoning here is all general industrial GI and will remain general industrial. The plat looks like this. So there are There are 3 lots here. Lot 1, the big Lot 2, and the smaller Lot 3. Lot 1 is all the way over here. Here you see there is depicted a 175-foot drain setback pursuant to our ordinance. Part of that is actually taken up on the drain board's property, so they're actually providing an easement for a little less, but that's a requirement of our ordinance. You will see in the that the property was originally noticed, it's listed on the agenda as having a subdivision waiver for drain setback. Working with the applicant, that is no longer required. He's just going to have the setback depicted on his plat, and if there's any future request for encroachment, he'll deal with the Southeast Cass Water Resources District on an individual basis. So that subdivision waiver is not required. Is that correct, Mr. Buchholz? Okay. Okay. And the applicant for the Buchholz addition, Mr. Buchholz, Mark Buchholz, is here with us this afternoon. Staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. And as always, when we deal with these drains, we do appreciate the cooperation of Southeast Cass Water Resources District and their consulting engineer, Moore Engineering. They work with us pretty well on this, and we appreciate their cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for Donald?
Donald, how do you get 3 lots out of this?
So there's Lot 1, Lot 2. I should have highlighted that. Follow the darkest line, Commissioner. So this is Lot 1. This is Lot 2. And then Lot 3 is down here. You see those?
Because the aerial, so they're taking.
There's 2 now. There are 2 now.
Right, and so part of that one lot is gonna take the parking lot out of the other one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, was confusing.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should have highlighted the lots like I do sometimes. Sorry.
And the driveways,
Right.
to that parking lot. Okay.
Yeah. And then
Going back to that aerial.
Yeah. And the applicant has put in an extra easement in here for access and utility also. I believe he's doing that with the idea that there might be future subdivisions here. He can explain his plan when it's his turn to speak.
Okay.
Any other questions for Donald? Okay, I'll invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Commission. Mark Buckles with Buckles Properties. Thank you for hearing this item and opportunity to be here tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Although I might suggest one addition to the motion, maybe one more vacation day for Mr. Kress.
I'm good, thank you.
He probably has a lot of vacation.
No.
Sorry, I shouldn't joke, but
No.
yeah, essentially we have existing user in place. There's 2 separate structures on site. So it was kind of irregular structure to that, where you have 2 separate structures on one lot that was irregular shaped. So essentially we thought, we have development land that is available to develop. So we wanted to isolate that. We also wanted to kind of 2 birds with 1 stone, isolate the 2 structures that are on site, which you kind of see on the bottom aerial. So basically, we have roughly a 15,000 square foot building and a 100,000 square foot building. It's the same user right now, but in the future that could change. So both for lease, for sale, whatever it might be in the future, it just, I think, more adequately sets the site up to have it set up to, be able to have either multiple users or 1 user in the future. And then also taking advantage of development land that's needed and that has been unused. It gives the existing users kind of an additional 2 acres that are depicted within those lots, but that's not really relevant to the plat that we're proposing. But happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion as presented in the staff report.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? Seeing none, go ahead and take the roll.
Shuey,
Aye.
Tasa,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Holtz.
Aye. Motion passes. Last item, item number 8. Hearing on CUP for Golden Valley Second Edition, Donald Kress to finish us off.
Can we just have one moment here, ma'am, to
Sure.
talk to our applicant for a second? So, item number 8, Golden Valley Second Edition. Again, we appreciate everyone's patience here on a lengthy hearing. So this is a conditional use permit to allow group living in the SR4 Single Dwelling Residential District at 2545 69th Avenue South. So 69th Avenue South, down here is 64th Avenue, 25th Street, 69th Avenue here. This is the Golden Valley subdivision. The building here is under construction. It's a residence under construction. As you see here in a couple of different views, this is looking down 69th Avenue South. The zoning here is SR4, single dwelling residential. The applicant proposes to, and she can explain this in a little more detail, technically perhaps, proposing to have what's called an agency foster home. And so this is specified here in the North Dakota Century Code, has a handy definition here. A residential home in which foster care for adults is regularly provided by professional staff trained to provide services. The applicant, Gisela Shimwe, is a registered nurse, to provide services to older adults or adults with disability in that location. And there's a North Dakota Administrative Code, which does have a little more detailed explanation. An agency foster home is not a group home, and this is a thing that we want to clarify here, that this, you can read this definition here, and again, the applicant could go into this in a little more detail. This is a medical situation for people, in her case, that she's proposing to care for victims of stroke and traumatic brain injury and dementia. The group living part, which is the CUP we're looking at, and again, we're only looking at a land use decision here, is required because under this Land Development Code, if you have 3 or more unrelated people living in a residence, that counts as group living. Lots of things are group living. Fraternity houses are group living in some cases, for example. And so we're not looking at the medical part of this. That's regulated by the state of North Dakota and the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services, and they license the providers. So the applicant will be licensed to provide this facility. We are just talking about a permit to make this consistent with the requirements of a Land Development Code, allowing more than 3 unrelated people. They are capped, as I understand it, at a maximum of 4 individuals who they can care for, plus the applicant and her sister, who will be, again, live-in caregivers, as we understand it. And again, she can go into some more detail here. We do have a recommended motion for approval here. The one condition we do have is if the property is transferred, the new owner must apply for a new conditional use permit in order to continue the group living use. Commissioners, it seems like this hearing started a long time ago, but you did include, you did have some laydown items in front of you there, where there were 4 copies of 4 emails that we have received in the last few days from nearby residents, in addition to a couple that were included in your packet. And some of these residents are here today to testify, as well as the applicant, Gisela Shimwe, and her real estate agent, Heather Hansen from Keller Williams. So that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for Donald?
So Donald, if there was 1 fewer residents, this would not need the conditional use permit?
Well,
Was it 3 versus 4?
yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, if you had no more than 3 unrelated, yeah, I suppose we only had 2 unrelated, I suppose you wouldn't need 1, yes. But they have and they don't have to have 4, they could have a maximum of 4, so this would cover their base.
Any other questions for Donald? I'll invite that.
One
Oh,
more.
Go ahead.
Is there a parking requirement when you classify it as group?
No, there isn't.
I mean, although, I mean, if it is what they say it is, the 2 people that are going to be there giving the care, it's got a 2-stall garage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but
We are under the impression that the people being cared for do not drive. So they.
Or don't have a car there.
Yeah, they're not
Get
able to
away.
drive.
No.
They're not able to drive. Yes, sir.
We're getting silly. Any other questions? Mark, did you want to say something? Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and invite the applicant up. Just remember to please state your name for the record.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Giselle Nshimwe. I am a registered nurse. I currently work in a critical care unit at Essential Health right now. So I'm a founder of A Place to Call Home, and I personally wanted to open this place because I encountered different patients in different days at the hospital where they had a stroke or they're currently going through dementia or possible brain injury and it's new to like them and they don't have a place to go or we have to find them a placement. And the next thing you hear is, we'll have you go to the nursing home. And usually that's like a shocking word to most of them and they don't want to go there. And as a nurse, I've also worked in a nursing home before. And at the nursing home, while I was there for probably about 3 years while I worked there, usually you get about a ratio of about 24 patients or more than that as one nurse in one unit. Specifically, I wouldn't say that you spend even more than 10 minutes, like wanting to take care of everyone. You wouldn't spend like more than 2 to 5 minutes being in a room. You have to currently keep running in and out, in and out, in and out. So for me, opening this, I want to take care of people. I want to be able to be there for them, be able to listen to them, be able to just give them the time that they need at all times and not just come in and out over and over and over again. So with an agency foster care home, it is a setting in which residential and habilitation and community supported services can be provided up to 4 patients. Not necessarily that we're gonna have 4 patients at all times, but that's how many we can have, and not more than that. So they would need 24 hours care per day, each day, and would also coordinate with case management at the moment and the state at all times. There's different certifications that I'm required to have while doing this, which I'm also working on at the moment. And I understand that the zoning proposal has brought up a lot of concerns, and I am here to provide clarities and assure you that our commitment will be benefiting this community as well. At A Place to Call Home, our goal is to provide a safe and supportive environment to those who need it the most. Services that we provide would include residential habilitation and community support, not just supervising the people or like watching them 24/7, but would also have to help them with rehab, to help them get back on their feet if they're able to, be able to include them with like community support with like activities, things in that manner. And they would have to be required to be eligible for Medicaid. And our target population pretty much is brain injury, stroke, and early dementia. And Donald did send me a couple concerns that were brought up, and one of them was cars left on the street during wintertime. People were worried about that. With that said, not necessarily that everybody we're gonna have is gonna be able to walk or be able to do things. I believe that we'll be able to provide the transportation that they need to get from one place to another. At most part, family will come and visit for sure, but we'll also have to set up a schedule on when they can be there if it's not an emergency. So there will be cars parked outside, but not 24/7. And during winter time, I'm sure they'll come and go throughout the day. Also, there was another concern that was brought up. I think it was from Moorhead Group Home, CSRI. There was an example. They had a resident that tried to turn the stuff with like a knife, and it was a dangerous situation. What I can say is I'm not promising that something like that would not happen or something crazy would not occur. I work at the hospital, and even 2 days ago, I had a patient that was fine for me, and around 4 a.m., he was a total different individual. This could happen to me, it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone. If you're not in the right state of mind, if you're not doing well, at any point, you could switch up. But it's my importance to be there and try to prevent those things from happening and initiate those measures and try to do something about it before it gets worsening. I know they had mentioned that there's also a resident that goes out naked and run around naked on that side. They're worried about, that being in the neighborhood and stuff like that. So we'll try our best. We're working with different individuals right now with the state case management. I'm working with a secure accreditation program, and we're going through different policies that needs to be put in place at the moment. So what I can say, I'll do my best to keep everything under control and try to follow the rules and regulations that the state requires me to. We started this project around, I'll say, February, and we've been working with the state. We've been working with the city of Fargo. We've been working with the development team that's building their home. We kind of went through almost everything that was required for us to do before we even started building it. And right now we're almost done. We're supposed to be done with it by August 8th. However, the fire marshal told me about last week that we need to add sprinklers because this is technically an agency, foster care. So right now we're waiting on that. And finally today we actually got a text message that we can move forward to add the sprinklers. So this is a project that's almost finished. And we've followed everything that needed to be done. I know it's hard. It's a change for the neighbors. It's a change for the community. But I would like you guys to please, I know it's hard to say yes to certain changes, but I'd like you guys from the bottom of my heart, if you guys could at least consider it. And I know you're probably wondering how many bedrooms it consists. Do I have enough space for the individuals? So the home being built right now, it consists of 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a living room upstairs, living room downstairs, laundry room. And obviously each individual would have a room for themselves. They don't have to share unless they really want to share with somebody. What else can I say? But I would like to thank you guys for the time. And this means a lot to me because I've put a lot of time and just to think about it. And it wasn't something, at first I was like, I want to move into a house. But then I was like, looking at everybody and everything that was going on at the hospital. And I'm just like, one of my patients told me one day, he said, I don't want to go to the nursing home. I want to go back home. If I could go home and you guys send me somebody, I'll just go home. But that's not how it works. This is not something that's available for everyone. It's not something that's out there at all times. And for me, I wanted to open the door. I wanted to have a place for people to call a home and not to feel like they have to go to a nursing home. I wanted to open that door for those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Giselle, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes. So, with SR4 dwellings, it's not uncommon to have things like daycares or schools, which, certainly have their fair share of unexpected events. So I think to address maybe some of the concerns of the neighborhood, it might help so I am familiar with Health and Human Services professionally and personally, but I think it might help to give some perspective to residents or members of the commission that might not be familiar. Now, the application says you and your sister plan to live in the home, correct?
We will not be living in the home, but we'll be there 24/7, especially with the care starting, because we don't know when we're gonna start having people in. There's a little bit of more things that needs to be done at this point.
So there will be one employee, at least one person providing care 24/7, and they would
There'll
be
be
able
two
to
of
sleep there?
us. There'll be two of
people?
us. But then after we start getting an individual, that's when we're gonna hire more individuals.
Okay.
Because right now, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be completed, and we cannot even hire anyone at this point.
And there's a best practice ratio for care like this, correct? So you wouldn't, so if you're only having 4 residents in the home, or 4 individuals rehabbing in the home at one time, you would have probably no more than 2 staff there.
Yes.
But then there might be times where case managers or occupational therapy, qualified service providers may be coming in. So you could have 3 or 4 cars, potentially at a time, correct?
That's something that when I talked to the state, they did not mention about people coming into us. I believe that possibly we might have to take, like, from my understanding, we have to take them to appointments.
So you
and
may
things
be
in that
traveling
manner.
out
So we'll
rather
be
than having
traveling
people
out,
coming in.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know that some people may not be able to walk. So some people might be wheelchair bound and things in that manner, and we're willing to get transportation to come and get them, and then one of us go with them.
Okay.
In that way.
And most of these residents, I appreciate your transparency when you're talking about, like, you're not making any promises that, unexpected things might not occur. So I appreciate that transparency and honesty. I think when we're talking about situations like this, especially in a neighborhood setting, there might be concerns that people will be traveling in and out at all hours, or there might be concerns that the residents themselves might try to leave. And would residents be allowed to have their own vehicles at the home?
Right now, she only told, like, from my understanding, after I spoke to Miss Erica, which I communicate with a lot, she told me that right now, not that they shouldn't off, because it depends with the screening, and after they do everything, like, how is the person like? What are they able to do and not able to do? And from the patients, the category of patients they are selecting, there's honestly maybe a slightly chance, but for the most part, they don't think so.
But if somebody were to have their car there, probably it's the only way they would have their car there is if they were at the level where they could drive
They
safely.
could do it on themselves.
Okay, that's all I have for questions.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No, but I got a question.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant while she's up there? No? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Questions for Donald?
There's something wrong here, Donald. How did
What's-
this get this far? There shouldn't have been a permit for this, period, until it came before us.
How do you mean, sir?
How did it, I mean, was somebody misled? Did they just go find a house that they're gonna take over and didn't tell them what they were gonna do? How did this go through the inspections department? A permit? This isn't, there's something wrong here.
So this is a permit for a land use on this building. The building permit is for the residence, and the building plans of that residence are included in your packet. We did talk to the applicant and say, to be able to do what you want in this residence, you're gonna have to have the CUP. So
Why didn't that stop the process right there? I mean, she's ready to think she's moving in.
Right, because we can't make her not apply. We can't say, don't apply for your residence. We can tell you can't have the use that you want in there without the CUP.
Okay, but
Pardon me, sir, Fire Marshal Ested.
Yeah, Ryan Erickson with the fire department. So I think if I understand your question right, what happened here is you have a single family residence permit issued, and so that process starts. And so that was one of the things like the applicant said, that I reached out once I saw this was coming through Planning Commission. Because we deal with this with other type of group homes or group living where it's developmentally disabled or say different styles of daycare. There's certain levels there where it triggers in that you, for example, the sprinkler system. And so really what's gonna happen is upon our approval here of the land use, they would, that use of that permit for that building permit would change to a group R4 care facility in the building code. So it's one of those, to your questions earlier, where you're asking about how you can have multiple layers of regulations. This is one of the cases where that would happen. So you have a planning use, you have a building code use, and then the applicant also has to work through state regulations through Cass County in the state of North Dakota.
But still back to my question, although this house was probably not built for them, I take it. This was a house that Jordan had, that was this house built for you guys?
Is it okay if I speak?
Yes.
Hi, I can hopefully provide some clarity on a couple of those questions. I am Heather Hansen. I'm the realtor working with Giselle and her sister. The home was built specifically for them. We started.
Okay, so this is, I mean, not to interrupt you, but
yes.
How come that didn't flag somebody in the inspections department that they can't do this until they get a permit to do what they wanted to do?
You could build a house, you could build a house in any configuration that you wish that meets the building code. But you can't have the use in here until you have the CUP.
Okay, but somebody wasn't up front with, I mean,
Well, we've
I'm
talked
in
to
the inspections
inspections.
department all the time.
Yeah, well,
So
you know,
somebody there
we've
let
talked
it-
to the inspections department about this, Commissioner. They know the CUP is coming.
In essence, the house hasn't closed. I believe the applicant and the builder were aware of this prior to pulling the building permit and still chose to construct this as a single-family residential dwelling unit.
So we did speak with the developer. So we've been working with Donaldson's before we had even identified the lot, any of that. And he was clear about the process and explaining it and things like that. And obviously it's a little bit convoluted with how many departments are involved. So there's definitely a lot of back and forth. But we knew up front, obviously, that we were going to be applying for this permit. So we had spoken with the developer before we ever went under contract on anything. And we had developer approval, and we were very transparent about what the home would be for. And Jodel worked very closely directly with them, with us, to make sure that the developer knew like what the intention of the home was, that it's still like considered a residential, area, and that it's still considered by the state of North Dakota to be a residence, not necessarily a group home in their eyes. And the developer did approve of it. So we were told the developer was okay, that we should have the go-ahead from kind of basically the community. And Donald had, told us obviously there was still more steps, but that moving forward, we were working with him to try to do it, as much as the city of Fargo requires from us. So all along the way, we got every yes we possibly could before we ever started. Yeah. So,
Except for this, yes. I mean,
yes.
there's still, this is not, it shouldn't have got this far.
Yes, and I think there probably was some confusion along the way, and I mean, as much as everybody probably tried to communicate, we had a few meetings and things like that, and I think there's just enough steps in the process that, and unfortunately with building, like this takes long enough that it would be pushed into next year, and that's just not very, able either. So, to the best of our ability, I guess we tried to do that. Yes, we wish we had been through this process before and knew probably a little bit more, just had the practice of it, for
Somebody
sure.
should have told you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Any other questions for Donald? No?
Ma'am, could I just add one thing?
Yep.
Let me just provide something I said earlier. Any parking requirements would be reviewed as we go forward with this.
Okay. Okay, I will open up the public hearing. Just a reminder, if you wish to speak, to state your name for the record.
Sorry, can I just make a few more points to start off the public, or should we go back to the applicant
Let me
after?
do the public and
Okay.
then I'll swing back to you.
Yep, absolutely.
Asinine.
Hi, my name is Dan Berglund. I live at 2610 Golden Lane South, which is approximately a block from where the house we're talking about is going up. I mean, I think they brought up a lot of points, which some I was aware of and some that they brought up, which raises more concerns for me. The first one is I think that the number of homes or homeowners that were notified. Some of us, we sound ill prepared, as some of us found out about this yesterday. Because there was, to me, that I'm aware of, only 2 homes that were told that this was going to go on, which is one of the houses, the homeowner is here. She's in the process of trying to sell her home. She lives just to the west of the property. And then there's another home, I would say kitty corner across the street to the south. And again, that I'm aware of, those were the only 2 people that were notified this was going on, because the rest of that immediate area is vacant lots and undeveloped. But there's homes that are a block away, block and a half. Nobody was notified that this was going on. We just got shared, neighbors found out. But I mean, to me, it's really about property value and what's allowed in a residential area. All of the things that were brought up, number of cars, they say they might not be able to drive, can't say it for sure. You could have 4 to 6 cars parked there, talking about visitors in and out. The fact that the homeowners themselves of the house might not even be there a lot of times. There might be staff. It's really just a commercial building. We start talking about adding sprinklers in a residential area. It becomes to me, are we going to allow a business of this or any kind, I guess, in a residential area where it just seems like it doesn't fit. As far as the developer approved, probably should have been notified. I know I talked to some people, the owners of the development themselves or the area, Eagle Ridge, I believe, have sent a letter of their opposition to the proposal. So I know there's other residents here. I'll let them speak as well.
My name is Edie Holcomb. I am the next door neighbor to this property. My home is pictured in one of the slides that was up there. Up until this spring, it's the arrow's right on it, right there. Up until this spring, with the construction going on both sides of my lot, I was sort of in an island. Because I'm a friendly person and I take pity on people who are working outside in the heat. I have learned a lot through this construction process by bearing jugs of ice water and baggies of cookies and talking to people who are the ones that are actually working from the Jordahl specs, doing the actual building, arriving in Jordahl trucks. And throughout the entire construction process, this has been described as a 3-bedroom family home. I have walked around it. I have not trespassed and gone into it, but I failed to see how it's being described as a 5-bedroom home. I also, as you can see, have a 2-car garage and a short driveway, which that property also has. And when you consider people who need medical services coming and going, and multiple caregivers, these 2 individuals, as well-intended as they are, cannot each work a 12-hour shift 7 days a week to cover this. There'll have to be multiple staff coming and going. So I'm giving one perspective, which is myself as a homeowner in the neighborhood, but I'm also thankful to Mr. Kress for allowing me to look at the application so that I would know for sure what I was talking about when I came here tonight. And I also have the familiarity that comes from having a mother who walked through this journey of living in this type of home, and I know about the issues that arose in neighborhoods surrounding the 2 homes that she lived in, one of which she had to leave because it was closed, because one of those unexpected events is an awfully mild way to describe someone wandering away in the middle of a winter and freezing to death. These concerns are very real. They upset the entire neighborhood. when medical care is needed in the middle of the night. All of the children in the neighborhood are wondering what's happening. It's very disruptive. I also have a concern for the residents themselves. Medically fragile people like this need a more sheltered environment than being one berm away from a very, very busy north-south thoroughfare, which is 25th Street. 25th Street is teeming with traffic. I noticed that one of your aerial maps didn't even show that Davies High School is practically kitty-cornered across the intersection. At least I can't see it there.
No, it's this,
Where
took
is
its
it?
place. Yeah, it'd be under here.
Davies High School generates a ton of traffic up and down. I have had multiple times when I could myself not turn left onto 25th Street to go north because I had to turn around and go south and go back down and around a roundabout. This is not a good setting for these, aside from the fact that this should have been revealed a long time ago and reviewed, as the commissioner brought out, should have been reviewed a long time ago. From the standpoint of the neighborhood, it presents great risks and it presents property value devaluation. Prior to living in this home, I lived in West Fargo, very near the Wilds, where a foster home was also placed. And as the Wilds developed, that became an island. It was the very last lots to be sold, the very last houses, because nobody wanted to be around there. And because the exact same things that the applicant is apologizing for that might happen do indeed happen. I have the concerns for the residents, whether it's an appropriate place for them. I have a concern for the neighborhood. I have a concern for property values. And I have a concern about how this whole process took place and got to this point without more review than it has had and without more specific information. I know there are 8 criteria. I don't see them now. I did see them when I reviewed the document. I understand from what you said earlier this evening that you can't deny something unless it violates one of the criteria. Well, one of the criteria is the type of SR designation that it has that refers to things like child care centers. I have to tell you that common sense reading of a criteria is a daytime child care is not the same as a 24/7 medical treatment for fragile people in a setting that's essentially creating a business zone. Services provided for money received is business. Essentially creating a business zone in a residential section with a residential descriptor. I would ask you to consider that these criteria are not met and that this is not an appropriate placement for the residents, for the neighborhood, and I would appreciate your denial of this application.
Thank you. And thanks for taking care of our construction workers on site. Can I see a show of hands of how many are left to speak? Okay.
Just one question, if any of you have documentation around the homeowners association tenants, that was mentioned a few times in the letters, be curious to understand.
About the covenants or?
Correct, yeah, if you've
I
got
didn't bring any
something.
with, because I just found out about this yesterday too, so I apologize. So, I'm Mike Strobel, I live in 2741 Golden Valley Parkway. And just kind of like Dan said too, is that this kind of got, thrown on us just yesterday because nobody really received the letter except for a few. I guess some of the people that live down there did express to me, because I'm part of the HOA board that we just formed recently, their concerns on this, so that's why I'm here too. But just from hearing the stuff that they've been talking about this since February, that it seems like they did just kind of want to throw this also. I mean, they were supposed to move in April or August 1st here, and now all of a sudden it seems, it's delayed a little bit, but here we are in this meeting finally, and it just seems like they're trying to sneak it in without really anybody gonna oppose it and stuff like that. So like I said, I'm just here to some of the people that live down there brought this to my attention, so that's why I'm here. So, but I would like to say no on this as well. So, but we can get the covenants if you want it. But the other thing too is it did say, I know they're probably not renters that are going to be there per se, but I know like in our area we can't have rentals. But obviously those people will be paying somehow to be staying there, so that's kind of part of it too. But we can get the covenants to you guys.
So, thanks.
Thank you.
Harold Rodenbacher. I live about a short block from the proposed house, and I really commend Ms. Giselle on what she's trying to do. You know, I had my mother for 7 years in assisted living, and I have a sister who's in the same position as needing this type of care, and she wants to go anywhere but a nursing home. So I commend everything she's trying to do. However, so we found out about this yesterday, and I'm going to keep it real simple in my mind. We moved in 2 years ago, a block away, to an HOA area that restricts it to single-family units. And we went there with that in mind. This is not a single-family unit. I think it'll become a business, and it'll rotate with people as they come in. They all need care. They all need beautiful care from a nurse, very much like this one. But I don't think it fits into our HOA covenant. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Gary Shep. We live at 2580 Golden Lane South, and we were the second home to be used in that development. And we were sold the property with the idea that it was single family. Now here is the problem. Only homes 300 feet of the 2545 69th Avenue were mailed the letters, and luckily Dennis and Teresa Berg were across the street, and they got the letter. And I was walking when he told me about this. I was the first person to alarm everybody that came today that this was going to take place. And it's absolutely a perfect thing for these people to do for handicapped people. There's nothing wrong with the idea. The problem is it's in the wrong place. Now, 3 of those lots right next to this building are vacant. And then the lady that just spoke, her house is there. One's under construction, and the only other one was the Berg home, was across the street in Division 2 of Golden Valley. So there is no one in our area that sent a letter to the city that was in favor of this. There were several letters received, I believe. This property was built by Jordahl, and the reason that Jordahl approved it is because they like to build houses. They're supposed to build 600 of them this year. They had to have this one to meet their quota. So they're darn sure wanting to build it. So my recommendation is to deny the condition use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this agenda item? Quick comment, yes.
I just wanted to say also, I think it
It affects the fact that this would be medically fragile people, that with the very few houses that are there, as he just mentioned, we're very, very low on the priority for getting that street plowed. I myself, and I want to say this as a tribute, especially what's happened in the last couple of weeks, I want to say this as a tribute to our fire department and our police. We had one blizzard where my husband, who is medically fragile, I was monitoring vital signs and might have had to get transportation from him. And the 25th Street had been plowed and the traffic was zooming. But just this little street with one house at that point on it was not getting plowed. I simply want to say that's a consideration people should have if they're going to create a foster home. But what I want to say as a tribute, and I wanted to take this opportunity, is when I was concerned, I called the city. Pretty soon, a Fargo dispatcher called me back and reassured me that if I did need help, that they would find a way to get to me. 20 minutes later, a Fargo police officer called me and said, "Would you flash your porch lights?" Which I did. He said, "I can see your house. I can see that you are marooned." He said, "I can't determine the priorities for plowing, but I'm going to see what I could do." And another 20 minutes, there was a plow that opened one lane through there so that if I would have needed to get out with my husband, I could have done it. I say that as a tribute to our Fargo Fire Department and Police Department, but I also say it because it's an important consideration for this kind of a facility that they're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Donald Press?
If I just may reinforce something that the testifiers talked about, ma'am, just for the record here. As the one gentleman stated, we had the 300-foot notice radius looks like this. That's stated in our ordinance. We don't change it case to case because that would be selective and we can't do that. So yes, you are correct that most of these are still owned by the developer, but that's where that comes from, just for your knowledge. Thank you. Let's figure out how this works.
I do understand the concerns of the 300 feet because I'm in that area, and as it was being built, right, there are no people by it to oppose, right? But I do understand the process of the 300 feet, but I understand the concerns of probably how you were notified in that, so I do understand those concerns. So we close the public hearing. Any other questions for staff at all? No. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Motion?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners?
I'd like to say a few words.
Absolutely.
I think the project is fantastic. I think when you spoke about the people who want to be treated in a type of project like this, I try to imagine my own grandma, and this is the kind of setting I'd like her to be in. And to hear residents' feedback that, oh, it's a great idea, but not here. Well, if not here, then where? It's where could you possibly do a project like this other than a single family neighborhood? You know, the patients that would be covered or cared for in this setting, you know, they deserve to be in a great neighborhood just like everyone else does. To your concerns about the parking and vehicle storage, it really doesn't sound like it would be much of an issue. I'm sure there's other residents in that neighborhood that have 4 to 6 vehicles themselves that park in the driveway, park in the garage, park in the street. They find a way to make it work. So I'm really supportive of this project. I think that this is something that, as we have a need for senior care like this, that we'll see more of this, and I would encourage more of this because it sounds really fantastic. So I applaud you for looking to do a project like this.
Yep.
I'm going to vote no. I don't like the way this process happened. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to do things. I just think it's in the wrong location. I think we have plenty of locations that would fit this better. It would be in a corner, could be in a different part of a residential area where there was extra lots and extra room to make this more fitting, but I just can't understand why we've gotten this far, and we've seen this in front of us at this level where it's almost done. And I think that there's better places. Even the developer, John Jonas, made that comment. I think it is gonna affect the other lots and the costs and the development in that area. And I think it's gonna affect some of the housing. And it's whether we, no, I'm not opposed to doing it. It's just that I think there's better locations.
Can I address that, or?
We've closed comment. Anybody else have any comments?
I understand that, I would have preferred that all these things were cleared up before it got here, because in the case of these people that want to do something very, very important, very needed in the community, that when they got into it, somebody would have said, well, wait a second, because of the way this is, you probably need to check the zoning before you've invested a ton of money and signed a contract. That maybe should have come to the developer or the builder and warned and flagged them. I don't know when they found out. I have no idea. On the other hand, I also agree that there's probably never a perfect spot that somebody wouldn't disagree or worry about traffic or something like that. It's always going to be a challenge to place these kind of settings somewhere without concerns, and I think many of the concerns are probably not that significant. I don't expect people who are on Medicaid to have a car that are disabled. That's not going to clog up the neighborhood, just not going to. I can see staff coming and going, but outside of that, maybe some visitations from relatives. As much as I have misgivings about the fact that we got this far before it came to us, I really don't want to see this project end either. So I'm in favor of it.
Many things are at a struggle with on this one, both the pros and the cons. The part that I'm troubled with is if the motion fails, what would be our reason for denial? Condition 3, would it cause substantial injury to the value of other property? 4, use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood. I wouldn't see this as domination. And on this scale, I'm questioning the level of substantial injury to other value of property. I'm not seeing anything that indicates that. That being said, I think the developer, Jordahl, sounds like they had full awareness of this and should have some level of responsibility in this very poor planning to bring forward to us. Not the city's planning, their awareness. They should have brought this up earlier.
Any other comments? Okay, we will go ahead and take the roll.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
No.
Holtz,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
No.
Motion passes, and
Ma'am, as Luke stated in his CUPs, there is a 10-day appeal period pursuant to Land Development Code. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Donald. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Adjourned.